Lena Ward thought invisibility was her survival strategy, until the night Vincent Moretti's cold gray eyes found her in the kitchen shadows of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant. She didn't know that her exhausted face, her calloused hands, and her quiet defiance had marked her for something far more dangerous than poverty. She didn't know her father's decades-old secret had painted a target on her back. And she certainly didn't know that the man offering her salvation had been watching her for months, waiting for the perfect moment to pull her into a gilded cage built on revenge. By then, it was already too late. If you're hooked already, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's dive into Lena's world. The kitchen of Aurelius was a battlefield disguised as art. Lena Ward had learned this truth during her first week as a dishwasher, when she'd watched a sous chef hurl a sauté pan across the room because someone had plated garnish a quarter-inch off center. She ducked, kept her head down, and returned to the endless mountain of dishes that defined her existence. That had been 18 months ago. Now, the crashes barely made her flinch. Steam rose in thick clouds around her as she scrubbed a copper pot, her fingers raw despite the industrial gloves. The dinner rush was ending, which meant she had another 2 hours of work ahead, breaking down the stations, scouring every surface until it gleamed, making the kitchen pristine enough for the celebrity chefs who'd arrive tomorrow morning to create their edible masterpieces. Lena had once dreamed of being one of those chefs. She'd spent 2 years at culinary school before her father's diagnosis had turned her carefully constructed future into ash. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Experimental treatments. Bills that multiplied faster than she could count them. She'd dropped out, moved back to the Bronx, and taken the first job that would pay cash under the table while she worked 2 other positions to keep the creditors from her father's door. The dream hadn't died completely. It had just learned to stay quiet, buried beneath exhaustion and the bitter knowledge that some people were born for kitchens like Aurelius, and some people were born to clean them. "Ward, stop daydreaming and move your ass!" Chef Benson's voice cracked through the kitchen like a whip. "We've got a VIP table sending back the salmon. Apparently it's not pink enough for their refined palates." Lena didn't bother looking up. She'd learned that making eye contact with Benson was an invitation for him to find more work, more reasons to remind her exactly how replaceable she was. She just nodded and scrubbed harder, letting the mechanical motion of steel wool against copper drown out the familiar chorus of her own inadequacy. "Yes, chef," she murmured. The kitchen staff ignored her. They always did. To them, she was part of the fixtures, as necessary and unnoticed as the walk-in freezer or the industrial dishwasher that sometimes broke down at the worst possible moments. She'd made peace with that invisibility. It was safer than being seen, safer than hoping for anything more than survival. She didn't notice the man who entered through the private dining room entrance at 9:47 that evening. Didn't see the way the entire kitchen seemed to hold its breath when he appeared, or how Chef Benson's face went pale beneath his perpetual flush. She was too focused on a particularly stubborn burned sauce, attacking it with the kind of determination that had kept her alive this long. "Mr. Moretti." Benson's voice had lost all its usual aggression, replaced by something that sounded uncomfortably like fear. "We weren't expecting you tonight. Is the meal not to your satisfaction?" "The meal is perfect, as always." The voice was smooth, controlled, with an edge beneath it that suggested violence held carefully in check. "I wanted to speak with you about a different matter." Lena's hands slowed. She'd heard that name before, Moretti. It was whispered in the kind of hushed tones people used when they didn't want to attract the wrong kind of attention. She didn't know details, but she knew enough. Vincent Moretti owned half of Manhattan's restaurant scene, along with several businesses that probably weren't discussed in polite company. He was the kind of man you didn't cross, didn't question, and definitely didn't make eye contact with. She kept scrubbing. Of course, Benson was saying, his voice climbing half an octave. "Whatever you need, Mr. Moretti. Should we step into my office?" "That won't be necessary." There was a pause, and Lena felt something shift in the air, the kind of primal awareness that made prey animals freeze when predators drew near. Tell me about your dishwasher. The pot slipped from Lena's hands, clattering into the industrial sink with a sound that seemed to echo through the sudden silence. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she slowly turned around. The man standing near the expediting station was nothing like she'd expected. Vincent Moretti wasn't old, wasn't obviously dangerous. He was maybe 35, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her annual salary, with dark hair and features that would have been handsome if not for the absolute coldness in his gray eyes. He was looking directly at her, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. My dishwasher? Benson stammered. You mean Lena? She's nobody, her name is Lena Ward. Moretti's gaze didn't waver from her face. 26 years old, dropped out of the Culinary Institute 2 years ago, works 3 jobs, lives in the Bronx with her father, who's currently undergoing treatment at Mount Sinai. He tilted his head slightly. Am I missing anything, Ms. Ward? Terror flooded Lena's system, cold and sharp. How did he know these things? Why did he know these things? She wanted to run, but her legs felt welded to the floor. She wanted to speak, but her throat had closed around any words that might have formed. She managed finally. I don't understand. You don't need to understand yet. Moretti took a step closer, and the kitchen staff parted like water around a stone. I have a proposition for you, Ms. Ward, one that I think you'll find interesting. Benson made a sound like a strangled laugh. Mr. Moretti, I assure you she's just a dishwasher. If you need someone with actual skills, I can recommend, I need someone with her skills. Moretti's voice didn't rise, but Benson's mouth snapped shut immediately. Miss Ward, I'm opening a new restaurant. I need an executive chef, someone with training, talent, and motivation. Someone hungry, in every sense of the word. His lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. I'm prepared to offer you $200,000 a year, plus full benefits, housing, and immediate coverage of your father's medical expenses. The kitchen had gone completely silent. Lena heard her own heartbeat, loud and erratic, drowning out rational thought. $200,000. Her father's medical bills, gone. Housing, meaning she could leave the apartment with the broken heat, and the neighbors who screamed through the walls at 3 a.m. It was too much. It was insane. Why? The word came out as a whisper. Why me? Moretti regarded her with those cold, assessing eyes. Because I've been watching you, Ms. Ward. I've seen you taste the sauces when the chefs aren't looking, making mental notes of what works and what doesn't. I've seen you arrive 2 hours before your shift to study the prep work, memorizing techniques. You have talent that's being wasted scrubbing other people's mistakes. He paused. I don't waste talent. Lena's mind raced. This didn't make sense. People like Vincent Moretti didn't offer salvation to people like her. There had to be a catch, had to be something wrong with this picture. But desperation was a powerful thing. It made you want to believe in miracles, even when every instinct screamed that miracles came with prices. I need time to think, she said, and was surprised by how steady her voice sounded. No. The single word was absolute. You decide now, Ms. Ward. Accept my offer or go back to your dishes. But understand, this opportunity won't come again. She looked at him, really looked at him, trying to see past the expensive suit and the carefully controlled expression. What she saw there terrified her. This man was dangerous in ways she couldn't articulate, in ways that had nothing to do with the rumors she'd heard. He was offering her everything she needed, wrapped in a package that set off every alarm bell she possessed. But her father was dying. The experimental treatment that might save him cost $18,000 per round, and insurance covered exactly none of it. She was drowning in debt, working herself into an early grave, and still falling further behind every single day. Vincent Moretti was offering her a lifeline. And even if that lifeline had teeth, even if she suspected she might be trading one prison for another, what choice did she really have? I accept, Lena said quietly. Something flickered in Moretti's eyes, satisfaction, maybe, or something darker. Excellent. You start Monday. My driver will collect you at 6 a.m. from your current address. He produced a business card from his jacket pocket, extending it toward her. This has my personal number. If you have questions before then, call. Lena took the card with fingers that trembled slightly. The cardstock was heavy, expensive, with embossed lettering that simply read, Vincent Moretti, followed by a phone number. No title, no business name, as if he needed no further introduction. One more thing, Ms. Ward. Moretti's voice stopped her as she started to turn back to her sink. Don't try to research me. Don't ask questions about who I am or what I do. And don't convince yourself that you can back out of this arrangement once you've had time to reconsider. His smile was sharp enough to cut. I've invested considerable time and resources into you. I don't appreciate wasted investments. The threat was clear, wrapped in velvet, but unmistakable. Lena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She watched as Vincent Moretti turned and walked out of the kitchen, taking the strange, charged atmosphere with him. The moment he was gone, the kitchen erupted in whispered conversation. Did that really just happen? Someone muttered. She's so fired, another voice said with vicious satisfaction. No way Benson keeps her around after that. But Chef Benson was staring at her with an expression Lena had never seen before, something that looked uncomfortably like fear mixed with a strange respect. Get your things, he'd said finally. You're done here. Lena stripped off her gloves with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. She grabbed her backpack from the employee closet, ignoring the stares and whispers that followed her through the kitchen. When she stepped out into the cold Manhattan night, the November air hit her like a slap, clearing some of the fog from her mind. What had she just done? The question followed her onto the subway, through the long ride back to the Bronx, up the 3 flights of stairs to the apartment she shared with her father. She found him asleep in his recliner, the television playing some late-night talk show at low volume. He looked smaller every day, his frame diminishing as the cancer ate away at him from the inside. Medical equipment crowded the small living room, oxygen tanks, pill bottles, the bedside commode they'd had to bring in when the bathroom became too far to walk. Lena stood in the doorway and watched her father breathe, in and out. Each breath a small victory against the inevitable. I got a new job, Dad, she whispered to his sleeping form. A good one. A crazy one. I think I might have just made a deal with the devil, but at least the devil pays well. Her father didn't stir. Lena walked to her bedroom, barely large enough for a twin bed and a dresser, and collapsed onto the mattress without bothering to undress. She pulled out Vincent Moretti's business card and stared at the embossed numbers. She should research him, should find out exactly what kind of man had just offered her everything she needed. But his warning echoed in her mind. Don't try to research me. How had he known she would want to? How had he known so much about her life, her situation, her desperate circumstances? The thought that he'd been watching her, studying her, learning her patterns and weaknesses, made her skin crawl. But beneath the fear was something else, something she barely wanted to acknowledge. For the first time in 2 years, she felt a spark of hope. Lena closed her eyes, clutching the business card like a talisman. She told herself she was doing this for her father, for survival, for all the right reasons. She told herself that whatever Vincent Moretti's real motives were, she was smart enough to protect herself. She told herself a lot of lies that night. And somewhere in the darkness of the city, in a penthouse apartment she couldn't begin to imagine, Vincent Moretti stood at his window and smiled. The trap was set. The prey had walked in willingly. Now came the interesting part. Saturday and Sunday passed in a blur of anxiety and surreal preparation. Lena had expected Moretti to call, to provide details about this new job, but her phone remained silent. She spent the time trying to convince herself this was real, that she hadn't hallucinated the entire encounter in some exhaustion-induced fever dream. On Sunday afternoon, she finally broke down and told her father. A job? Robert Ward looked up from the medical journal he'd been pretending to read. Despite his illness, he maintained the habits of the police detective he'd been for 30 years, always observing, always questioning. What kind of job pays enough to make you look that terrified? Lena perched on the edge of the couch, choosing her words carefully. Executive chef position, new restaurant. The owner saw me at Aurelius and made an offer. Her father's eyes sharpened. What's the owner's name? Vincent Moretti. The medical journal fell from Robert Ward's hands. His face went ashen, and for a horrible moment Lena thought she'd triggered another medical crisis. but her father's hand came up, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. "No," he said hoarsely. "Absolutely not. You call him right now and tell him you've changed your mind." "Dad, I can't. He's offering enough to cover your treatments to—" "I don't care if he's offering $1,000,000. Her father's voice cracked with urgency. "Lena, listen to me. Vincent Moretti is not someone you make deals with. He's not someone you even speak to if you can help it. Whatever he wants from you, it's not worth the price." Lena stared at her father, seeing real fear in his eyes for the first time since his diagnosis. "How do you know him?" "I don't. Not directly." Robert Ward released her wrist, sinking back against the cushions. He looked older suddenly, worn down by more than cancer. "But I know his family. I know what they do, what they're capable of. And I know that men like Vincent Moretti don't offer charity to dishwashers from the Bronx without reason." "Then why?" Lena demanded. "Why would he choose me? What possible reason could he have?" Her father's silence was answer enough. He knew something that connected her to Vincent Moretti in ways she didn't understand. But before she could press further, he started coughing, deep, racking spasms that left him gasping. Lena grabbed his oxygen mask, helping him breathe, watching the monitor until his levels stabilized. By the time the coughing fit passed, the moment for questions had gone. Her father fell into an exhausted sleep, and Lena sat beside him, her mind churning through possibilities she didn't want to consider. At 5:30 Monday morning, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Car will arrive at 5:50 a.m. Be ready." Lena dressed in the only professional clothes she owned, black slacks and a white button-down that had seen better days. She twisted her dark hair into a bun, studying her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles shadowed her green eyes, testament to a sleepless weekend. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman out of her depth, trying to fake competence she didn't feel. The car that arrived at 5:50 was a black SUV with tinted windows. The driver was a man in his 40s, built like he spent his free time breaking concrete blocks with his forehead. He didn't introduce himself, just opened the rear door and waited. Lena climbed in, her heart hammering. The interior was all leather and tinted glass, insulated from the world outside. As the SUV pulled away from the curb, she watched her neighborhood disappear. The bodega where she bought coffee, the laundromat where she spent Sunday mornings, all the familiar landmarks of her small, contained life. The drive took 40 minutes, threading through morning traffic into Manhattan's financial district. They pulled up in front of a building Lena recognized, the Moretti Tower, a gleaming structure of steel and glass that dominated the skyline. She'd walked past it dozens of times, never imagining she'd have reason to enter. The driver led her through a private entrance, into an elevator that required a key card to operate. They rode in silence to the 42nd floor. When the doors opened, Lena stepped into a space that redefined her understanding of luxury. The penthouse office was all floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a view of Manhattan that made her dizzy. Minimalist furniture in shades of gray and black, abstract art that probably cost more than her childhood home. And standing at the window, silhouetted against the rising sun, was Vincent Moretti. "Ms. Ward." He turned, and Lena was struck again by how normal he looked. How someone so dangerous could appear so civilized in a perfectly tailored suit. Punctual. "I appreciate that." "I didn't think I had a choice," Lena said before she could stop herself. Moretti's smile was sharp. "You're learning. Come, sit. We have business to discuss." He gestured to a seating area, a couch and chairs arranged around a glass coffee table. Lena sat stiffly on the edge of the couch, while Moretti settled into the chair across from her with the ease of someone completely in control of his environment. "First things first." He slid a folder across the table. "Your employment contract. Read it carefully." Lena opened the folder with trembling fingers. The contract was extensive, filled with legal language she only half understood, but certain phrases jumped out at her. 200,000 annual salary, comprehensive health coverage including experimental treatments, penthouse apartment in Moretti Tower, rent-free, 5-year minimum commitment. 5 years. Lena's stomach dropped. That's a long time. "It's a substantial investment on my part," Moretti said evenly. "I need assurance of your commitment. The restaurant I'm opening, Vittoria, will be the crown jewel of my portfolio. I can't have my executive chef walking away after 6 months. Vittoria, the Italian word for victory. Lena filed that away, along with all the other details that felt significant in ways she couldn't articulate. What if I fail? She asked quietly. What if I'm not good enough? You won't fail. Moretti's certainty was absolute. I don't make mistakes about talent, Ms. Ward. You have something most trained chefs lack. Hunger. Real hunger, the kind that drives excellence. I watched you at Aurelius, studying every plate that went out, every technique, storing it all away. You weren't just washing dishes, you were learning. The fact that he'd watched her that closely should have terrified her more than it did. Maybe she was already becoming numb to the wrongness of this situation. Or maybe desperation had lowered her threshold for fear. There are other clauses you should note, Moretti continued. The apartment comes fully furnished. You'll have a personal assistant to handle your father's medical appointments and daily care. Wait, Lena looked up sharply. My father? Did you think I'd make you choose between your career and his care? Moretti's expression remained neutral. That would be counterproductive. Your father will be moved to a private facility with round-the-clock medical staff. You'll be able to visit whenever you like, but you won't be responsible for his day-to-day needs. You'll be free to focus entirely on Vittoria. It was everything she needed, everything she'd been drowning trying to provide, and it felt like a noose tightening around her neck. Why are you doing this? The question burst out of her. And don't tell me it's because you don't waste talent. There are hundreds of trained chefs in this city who could run your restaurant. Why me? Vincent Moretti leaned back in his chair, studying her with those cold gray eyes. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, because you remind me of someone. Someone who deserved better than what life gave her. Consider this my attempt at correction. The answer was both too much and not enough. Lena wanted to demand more, to push past the careful walls he'd erected. But something in his expression warned her that some doors, once opened, couldn't be closed. I need to think about this, she said. No. Moretti's voice was soft, but it carried an edge that made her freeze. You already accepted my offer, Ms. Ward. This conversation is a courtesy, not a negotiation. You can sign the contract now or you can walk away. But if you walk away, understand that this opportunity dies with your refusal. Your father returns to Mount Sinai's standard care. You return to washing dishes at whatever establishment will hire you after word spreads that you walked out on Aurelius. And he smiled thinly, I find another project to occupy my time. The threat was clear. This wasn't really a choice at all. It had never been a choice. Lena picked up the pen lying beside the contract. Her hand shook as she signed her name on the designated line, committing herself to 5 years in Vincent Moretti's gilded cage. As the ink dried, she felt something fundamental shift, a door closing on her old life, another opening onto something she couldn't yet see. Excellent. Moretti stood, extending his hand. Welcome to Vittoria, Chef Ward. She shook his hand, feeling the strength in his grip, the control. When do I start? Today. He moved to his desk, returning with another folder. This contains the apartment keys, building access cards, and information about your new position. Your father will be transferred to the Evergreen Care Facility this afternoon. I've already arranged transport and notified his medical team. Your personal assistant, Miranda, will handle the logistics. Everything had been decided, planned, executed before she'd even signed the contract. Lena felt like a chess piece being moved across a board, part of a game whose rules she didn't understand. The kitchen staff reports at 2 p.m. today for your introduction, Moretti continued. I suggest you use the morning to settle into your apartment and review the restaurant plans. Miranda will brief you on the concept, the menu framework, and the timeline. We open in 6 weeks. 6 weeks to create an entire restaurant from scratch. It was impossible. It was insane. It was exactly the kind of challenge that made Lena's blood sing beneath the fear. I'll be ready, she said. I know you will. Moretti walked her to the elevator, his hand resting lightly on her lower back, a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. One more thing, Ms. Ward. Your apartment is on the 38th floor. My residence is on the 42nd. If you need anything at all, I'm easily reached. The elevator doors opened. Lena stepped inside, turning to face him. Why do I get the feeling you've orchestrated every detail of my life? Vincent Moretti smiled, and for just a moment something flickered in his expression, something almost human. Because I have. But I think you'll find, Chef Ward, that sometimes surrender is its own form of freedom. The elevator doors closed on his enigmatic smile, and Lena was alone with her racing thoughts and the contracts that had just sealed her fate. The apartment on the 38th floor was a revelation. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, flooding the space with morning light, modern furniture in soft neutrals, a kitchen that made her actually gasp, professional-grade appliances, marble countertops, every tool and gadget a chef could dream of having. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, all decorated with impeccable taste. It was perfect. It was beautiful. It felt nothing like home. Lena walked through the rooms, touching surfaces that didn't feel real. In the master bedroom, she found her clothes already hung in the closet, everything she'd owned plus additions. Designer pieces in her exact size, from casual wear to professional chef's whites. In the bathroom, toiletries and cosmetics arranged with precision. He'd been in her apartment, had gone through her things, cataloged her sizes, her preferences, her entire existence. The violation should have sent her running. Instead, she just felt numb. A knock at the door made her jump. She opened it to find a woman in her 50s, professionally dressed, with kind eyes and a warm smile. Chef Ward, I'm Miranda Chen, your personal assistant. Mr. Moretti asked me to help you get oriented. Please, just Lena. She stepped aside, letting Miranda enter. This is all a bit overwhelming. I imagine so. Miranda's voice was sympathetic. I've been with Mr. Moretti for 8 years. I know how intense he can be. But I promise, once you adjust to his thoroughness, you'll find he's an excellent employer. They sat at the dining table, a sleek piece of walnut that seated 8, while Miranda walked her through the details. The care facility where her father would be staying was top tier, with specialists in oncology and palliative care. Visiting hours were flexible. A car service would be available whenever Lena needed transport. The restaurant, Vittoria, was being constructed in a historic building in Tribeca. The concept was modern Italian, elevated but approachable. The kitchen would be state-of-the-art. The dining room would seat 80, with a private room for exclusive events. Mr. Moretti has very specific vision for Vittoria, Miranda explained, sliding a leather portfolio across the table. But he's hired you to execute that vision in your own way. He trusts your instincts. Lena flipped through the portfolio, studying architectural renderings and design concepts. Everything was elegant, sophisticated, expensive. The kind of restaurant that attracted celebrities and critics, that made or broke careers. How much creative control do I actually have? She asked. Miranda hesitated. More than most people in Mr. Moretti's employ. He's invested in your success, Lena, in ways I don't fully understand. My advice? Trust your talent. Don't second-guess yourself, and don't try to figure out his motivations. You'll drive yourself crazy. It was honest advice, delivered with genuine concern. Lena found herself warming to Miranda despite her circumstances. They spent the next 2 hours reviewing schedules, protocols, and expectations. By the time Miranda left, Lena's head was spinning with information. She stood at the window, watching the city move below her, feeling like she'd been transplanted to another planet. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Your father is settled at Evergreen. He's asking for you. VM. Lena didn't question how Vincent Moretti had her personal number. She just grabbed her coat and took the elevator down to the lobby, where a car was already waiting. The Evergreen Care Facility was nothing like the overcrowded hospital ward where her father had been languishing. It was quiet, clean, with staff who actually smiled. They led her to a private suite on the 3rd floor, a room with windows, real furniture, medical equipment that looked like it belonged in the 21st century. Her father was sitting up in bed, looking better than he had in months. The oxygen mask was gone. His color had improved. He looked at her with such complex emotions that Lena nearly started crying. You signed the contract, he said quietly. I didn't have a choice, Dad. There's always a choice. But his voice lacked conviction. Robert Ward gestured to the chair beside his bed. Sit down, Lena. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Lena sat, her stomach knotting with dread. Does this have to do with Vincent Moretti? With his family? Yes. Her father took a shaky breath. 28 years ago, I was a young detective working organized crime. I was assigned to a case, the murder of Isabella Moretti, wife of Antonio Moretti, mother of their only son, Vincent. The room seemed to tilt. Lena gripped the arms of the chair. What happened? Isabella witnessed something she shouldn't have. A business deal gone wrong, resulting in a murder. She went to the police, offered to testify. We promised her protection. Her father's hands twisted in the bedsheet. But someone leaked the information. The family she was testifying against got to her first. She was killed in her home while we had her in protective custody. Vincent was 12 years old. He found his mother's body. Horror crawled up Lena's spine. Dad. The man who killed her was named Marcus Reeve. He was connected, protected. The case went nowhere, no arrests, no justice. Just another unsolved murder in a city full of them. Robert Ward's voice cracked. I was the lead detective, Lena. I was responsible for keeping Isabella Moretti safe. And I failed. Understanding crashed over her like a wave. Vincent knows. He knows you were involved. I'm sure he does. The Moretti family doesn't forget. They don't forgive. Her father reached for her hand. Whatever he's offering you, whatever this restaurant deal is, it's not about your talent, Lena. It's about revenge. Your leverage against me. A way to settle an old score. Lena's mind raced, connecting pieces she hadn't wanted to see. Vincent's careful observation of her, his knowledge of her desperate situation, the way he'd watched her with those cold, calculating eyes. He hadn't chosen her randomly. He'd chosen her specifically because of who her father was. I have to confront him, she said, standing up. Her father's grip on her hand tightened. No. You stay away from Vincent Moretti. You walk away from this deal, and we'll figure something else out. With what money, Dad? How? Lena's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. You're dying. The treatments you need cost more than I'll make in 10 years of washing dishes. This facility, your care, I can't provide any of it without Moretti's money. Then let me die. Her father's eyes were fierce. I'd rather die than watch him use you to hurt me. Well, that's not your choice to make. Lena pulled her hand free, backing toward the door. I signed the contract. 5 years. Whatever Vincent Moretti wants from me, I'll survive it. I've survived worse. She was lying. They both knew it. But sometimes lies were the only kindness left. Lena fled the facility before her father could see her cry. In the car back to Moretti Tower, she let the tears come. Hot, angry, terrified tears. Vincent Moretti had built her a beautiful cage. He'd baited it with everything she needed, everything she couldn't resist. And she'd walked right in, never questioning why the door had been left open. But now she knew, and knowing changed everything. The kitchen staff of Vittoria was assembled when Lena arrived at 2 p.m., her eyes still red but her spine steel. There were 12 of them, sous chefs, line cooks, pastry specialists, all with impressive credentials and obvious skepticism about their new executive chef. They looked at her the way the staff at Aurelius had looked at her, like she was a mistake waiting to be corrected. Vincent Moretti stood at the front of the empty restaurant space, watching her entrance with unreadable eyes. He'd changed into more casual clothes, dark jeans, a black sweater that probably cost more than her old monthly rent. He looked younger, less intimidating. It was a lie, and Lena wasn't falling for it. Everyone, this is Chef Lena Ward, Moretti announced. She'll be leading Vittoria's kitchen. I expect you to treat her with the respect her position deserves. Respect bought with money and threats, Lena thought bitterly. She stepped forward, meeting the eyes of her new staff. Most looked away. A few held her gaze with open challenge. I know what you're thinking, Lena said quietly. You're wondering how someone with my minimal experience got this position. You're wondering if I slept my way here or if I'm someone's charity project. She paused, letting the words sink in. I don't care what you think. I care what you cook. This restaurant opens in 6 weeks. That means we have 42 days to create a menu, perfect execution, and become the kind of team that can handle a Michelin review. If you're not ready to work harder than you've ever worked, there's the door. Silence. Then, slowly, one of the sous chefs, A woman with sharp features and sharper eyes smiled. Heard you trained at CIA before dropping out. That true? 2 years. Had to leave for family reasons. What was your focus? Regional Italian, farm-to-table techniques, pasta from scratch. Lena met the woman's challenge directly. I'm not classically trained like you are, but I've spent the last 2 years studying every plate, every technique, every mistake in one of Manhattan's top kitchens. I know what works, and I know what doesn't. The sous chef nodded slowly. I'm Gianna Russo. If you can make decent cacio e pepe, I'll give you a chance. It was a test, and they both knew it. The simplest pasta dish in Italian cuisine. 4 ingredients: pasta, pecorino romano, black pepper, pasta water. And almost impossible to perfect. Kitchen functional? Lena asked Moretti. Fully equipped as of this morning. His voice was neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Pride, maybe. Or anticipation of watching her fail. Lena rolled up her sleeves. Then let's cook. The kitchen was a dream. Gleaming stainless steel, professional-grade everything, organized with the kind of precision that suggested Vincent Moretti's controlling hand. Lena found pasta, cheese, pepper. She filled a pot with water, setting it to boil while she grated pecorino by hand. The staff gathered around, watching, waiting for her to prove herself or confirm their suspicions. She didn't let herself think about Vincent Moretti watching from the doorway. Didn't let herself think about revenge or cages or the complicated trap she'd walked into. She just cooked. The pasta went into the boiling water. While it cooked, she toasted whole peppercorns in a dry pan, then crushed them coarsely. She reserved pasta water, that starchy, salty liquid that would become the sauce. When the pasta was al dente, she worked quickly. Pasta into the pan with pepper, pasta water added gradually. Pecorino whisked in off the heat to prevent clumping. The sauce came together, creamy and glossy, coating each strand of pasta perfectly. She plated it simply, presented it to Gianna Russo without ceremony. The sous chef took a bite, chewed slowly, swallowed. Then she smiled. A real smile. Not the challenging smirk from before. You'll do, Gianna said. And just like that, Lena had her first ally. The rest of the afternoon was spent reviewing the kitchen, discussing the menu concept, establishing the hierarchy and workflow. Lena fell into the rhythm of it, her mind engaging with problems she actually knew how to solve. For a few hours, she almost forgot about Vincent Moretti watching her from the shadows. Almost. When the staff finally departed at 7 p.m., Lena found herself alone in the kitchen with the man who'd orchestrated her entire existence. He moved through the space like he owned it, which, of course, he did, studying the notes she'd made, the menu ideas she'd sketched out. You did well today, he said finally. Don't. Lena's voice was sharp. Don't pretend this is about my performance. I know why I'm here. My father told me about your mother. Moretti went very still. When he turned to face her, his expression was completely blank, the kind of blank that meant violence held in check. Did he? Isabella Moretti, the case that went nowhere, the detective who failed to protect her. Lena crossed her arms, refusing to back down even as fear spiked through her. I'm leverage. That's all this is. You're using me to hurt my father. For a long moment, Vincent Moretti said nothing. Then, slowly, he began to smile. And it was the coldest expression Lena had ever seen. You're partially right, he said softly. When I started watching you, yes, it was about your father. About making him watch his daughter become entangled with the son of the woman he failed to save. Poetic justice, in a way. He moved closer, and Lena forced herself not to retreat. But somewhere along the line, Chef Ward, something changed. What changed? The question came out as a whisper. Moretti reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek so gently it made her shiver. You did. You stopped being a tool for revenge and became something more interesting. A puzzle I wanted to solve. A talent I wanted to cultivate. His thumb traced her jawline. An obsession I couldn't quite explain. Lena's breath caught. This was wrong. All of it was wrong. But her body was responding to his touch in ways that terrified her. You can't just decide I'm yours to cultivate. Can't I? His voice was velvet over steel. Look around, Lena. Look at everything I've given you. The restaurant, the apartment, your father's care. I've bought your time, your talent, your future. The only question is whether I've bought anything else. She should slap him, should run, should do anything except stand there, frozen, while Vincent Moretti looked at her like she was something precious and dangerous all at once. I hate you, she said, and wasn't sure if it was true. I know. He stepped back, breaking the spell. But you'll work for me anyway. You'll create something beautiful in that kitchen. And maybe, eventually, you'll understand that some cages are built to keep the world out, not to keep you in. He left her standing in the kitchen, her mind reeling, her heart pounding against her ribs like it was trying to escape. Lena sank into a chair, her legs suddenly too weak to support her. What had she gotten herself into? The question had no good answer. She was trapped in Vincent Moretti's gilded cage, caught between revenge and obsession, between hatred and something she refused to name. The next 5 years stretched before her like a sentence. But as she sat in that beautiful, terrible kitchen, Lena Ward made herself a promise. She would survive this. She would create something extraordinary. And somehow, some way, she would find a way to be more than Vincent Moretti's carefully orchestrated revenge. She would find a way to be free, even if that freedom came with teeth. The first week at Vittoria passed in a controlled frenzy of menu testing, staff training, and sleepless nights. Lena threw herself into the work with an intensity that bordered on desperation, using exhaustion as a shield against the thoughts that crept in during quiet moments. If she stayed busy enough, she didn't have to think about Vincent Moretti's fingers on her face, or the way his words had wrapped around her like silk cords. She arrived at the restaurant each morning at 5 and didn't leave until midnight. The kitchen became her sanctuary, the one place where she felt something close to control. Gianna Russo proved to be an invaluable ally, translating Lena's vision into practical execution while managing the more skeptical members of the team. By the end of the week, they'd developed a working menu, 12 primi, 8 secondi, 6 dolci, each dish a careful balance between tradition and innovation. Vincent appeared at the restaurant every few days, always unannounced, always watching from the periphery. He never interfered with her work, never questioned her decisions. He just observed with those cold gray eyes, making notes in a leather journal she never got close enough to read. His presence made her skin prickle with awareness, even when she couldn't see him. On Friday evening, after the staff had gone home, Lena was breaking down her station when she felt him behind her. She'd learned to recognize the shift in air pressure that announced his arrival, the way silence seemed to deepen when Vincent Moretti entered a room. "The menu is excellent," he said without preamble. "Better than I anticipated." Lena didn't turn around. "You mean better than a dishwasher should be capable of?" "I mean exactly what I said." His footsteps were soft on the kitchen floor. "You have a gift, Lena, for balancing flavors, for understanding what makes a dish memorable rather than merely competent. It's rare." She finally faced him, exhaustion making her reckless. "Is this where you remind me that you discovered this gift? That I should be grateful?" "No, this is where I invite you to dinner tomorrow night, 7 p.m., my apartment." His expression was unreadable. "We need to discuss Vittoria's launch strategy, and I prefer not to conduct business in restaurants." It wasn't a request, they both knew that, but Lena found herself nodding anyway, too tired to fight. "Fine, 7 p.m. Wear something other than chef's whites," Vincent added as he turned to leave. "I'll have Miranda send options to your apartment." "I can dress myself," Lena snapped. He paused at the kitchen door, glancing back with something that might have been amusement. "I'm sure you can, but indulge me. I like surrounding myself with beautiful things." The words hung in the air long after he'd gone, making Lena's cheeks burn. She finished cleaning her station with sharp, angry movements, trying not to think about being added to Vincent Moretti's collection of beautiful things, trying not to wonder what happened to those things when he grew bored of them. The next morning, Lena visited her father at Evergreen. She found him in the facility's garden, bundled against the November chill, looking stronger than he had in months. The experimental treatment was working, slowly but measurably. His color had improved, his energy was returning. Watching him laugh at something one of the nurses said, Lena felt her resolve waver. This was why she'd made her deal with the devil. This moment, right here. You look tired, Robert Ward observed when she joined him on the bench. Working too hard? The restaurant opens in 5 weeks. There's no such thing as working too hard right now. Lena pulled her coat tighter against the wind. But the treatment is helping. You look good, Dad. Her father's expression clouded. At what cost, though? Lena, every day you work for that man is a day you're alive, she interrupted firmly. We're not having this argument again. I made my choice. He's using you. I know, and I'm using him right back. I'm getting world-class training, connections, experience I could never afford on my own. When my 5 years are up, I'll have options. Lena tried to sound more confident than she felt. I can survive Vincent Moretti. Her father studied her with the sharp gaze of someone who'd spent 30 years reading people. You're lying to yourself if you think this is just a business arrangement. I've seen the way men like Moretti operate. They don't invest this kind of time and money without expecting returns that go beyond professional. Lena's stomach twisted, but she kept her voice steady. Then I'll handle that when it happens. I'm not fragile, Dad. I'm not going to break just because things get complicated. That's what worries me, Robert said softly. You're so focused on not breaking that you're not seeing the ways you're already bending. The words followed Lena back to Moretti Tower, echoing in her mind as she rode the elevator to the 38th floor. In her apartment, she found 3 garment bags hanging on her bedroom door, each containing a dress more expensive than her monthly grocery budget used to be. Miranda had included a note. Mr. Moretti suggests the blue one, but the choice is yours. Of course he'd made a suggestion. Vincent Moretti had opinions about everything. Lena pulled out all 3 dresses, studying them with reluctant appreciation. The blue one was stunning, deep sapphire silk that would bring out her eyes, with a neckline that was elegant without being provocative. The other 2 were equally beautiful, one in emerald green, one in charcoal gray. All designer pieces, all perfectly sized. She chose the emerald green out of pure spite. At 6:45, Lena stood in front of her bathroom mirror, barely recognizing herself. The dress fit like it had been made for her body, hugging curves she usually hid under chef's whites. She'd left her dark hair down, applied minimal makeup, just enough to look polished without feeling like she was trying too hard. Her reflection showed a woman who belonged in penthouses and expensive restaurants, not someone who'd been washing dishes 8 weeks ago. The transformation should have felt empowering. Instead, it felt like another costume, another role in Vincent Moretti's carefully staged production. At precisely 7 p.m., Lena took the elevator to the 42nd floor. The doors opened directly into Vincent's apartment. No hallway, no buffer between public and private space, just immediate immersion into his world. The penthouse was twice the size of her apartment, with the same floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Manhattan. But where her space felt impersonal despite the luxury, Vincent's apartment was distinctly lived in. Books lined built-in shelves. Original artwork covered the walls, not the safe, expensive pieces from his office, but edgier works that suggested actual taste rather than investment. A grand piano stood near the windows, its surface holding framed photographs Lena couldn't see clearly from the elevator. Vincent emerged from what she assumed was the kitchen, and Lena's breath caught despite herself. He dressed down, dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms that were more muscular than his suit suggested. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his fingers through it. He looked younger, more human, and somehow more dangerous because of it. "Green," he observed, his mouth quirking. "I should have known you'd choose the opposite of my suggestion." "I don't take direction well," Lena said, stepping into the apartment. "Thought you should know that about me." "I already did. It's one of your more appealing qualities." Vincent gestured toward the dining area, where a table had been set for 2. Candles, wine glasses, place settings that probably cost more than her culinary school tuition. "I hope you don't mind that I cooked. I find restaurant conversations about restaurants tedious." Lena stopped walking. "You cooked?" "I'm Italian. Of course I cook." He pulled out a chair for her, waiting until she reluctantly sat before moving to his own seat. "My mother taught me before she died. It's one of the few good memories I have of her." The mention of his mother was deliberate, Lena realized. A test to see how she'd react now that she knew the history. She kept her expression neutral as Vincent poured wine. Something red and probably prohibitively expensive. "What did you make?" she asked, changing the subject. Ossobuco with saffron risotto. Nothing fancy, but it was her specialty. He raised his glass in a mock toast. To Vittoria. May she exceed all expectations. Lena clinked her glass against his, meeting his eyes over the rim. The wine was excellent, rich and complex, warming her from the inside. She watched as Vincent disappeared into the kitchen, returning with 2 plates of food that made her chef's instincts immediately engage. The ossobuco was perfectly braised, the veal tender enough to cut with a fork. The risotto was creamy, with just the right amount of bite to the rice. The saffron was high quality, lending its distinctive flavor without overwhelming the dish. Lena took a bite, and despite her determination to remain unimpressed, she had to close her eyes. It's good, she admitted grudgingly. High praise from someone who spent 2 hours yesterday perfecting a porcini cream sauce. Vincent's tone was dry. I watched the security footage. Lena's eyes snapped open. You have cameras in the kitchen? I have cameras everywhere. Security measure. He cut into his veal with precise movements. You're very focused when you cook. You get this expression, completely absorbed, like nothing exists except the food. It's fascinating to watch. The idea of him watching her through cameras, studying her when she thought she was alone, should have outraged her. Instead, she felt heat creep up her neck that had nothing to do with anger. That's incredibly invasive, she said, keeping her voice level. Yes, Vincent agreed without apology. I'm an invasive person, Lena. I thought we'd established that. They ate in silence for a few minutes, the tension between them thick enough to cut. Lena tried to focus on the food, on analyzing the technique and flavors, but she was hyper-aware of Vincent's presence across the table. The way he moved, precise and controlled. The way he watched her like she was a puzzle he was close to solving. Why did you really invite me here? She asked finally. We could have discussed launch strategy in your office. Vincent set down his fork, studying her with those unreadable gray eyes. Because I wanted to see you outside the restaurant. Because I wanted to have a conversation where you weren't hiding behind your chef's coat in professional distance. He paused. Because I wanted you in my space, surrounded by my things, so I could see how you fit. The honesty was more unsettling than any lie would have been. Lena's pulse quickened. And do I? Fit? Too well. His voice dropped lower. It's becoming a problem. What kind of problem? Vincent stood, gathering their plates despite Lena's protest. She followed him into the kitchen, a massive space that rivaled Vittoria's professional setup. He rinsed the dishes with economical movements, his back to her, and for a moment she saw something almost vulnerable in the line of his shoulders. You were supposed to be simple, he said quietly. A means to an end. Justice for my mother, however indirect. I would give you everything you needed, watch your father realize that his daughter was under my control, and feel some measure of satisfaction. He turned, leaning against the counter. But you're not simple, Lena. You're complicated and talented and stubborn as hell. And somewhere in the last 6 weeks, revenge stopped being enough. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. What are you saying? I'm saying that I want you. The words were blunt, stripped of pretense. Not as leverage. Not as part of some elaborate scheme. Just you. In my kitchen at 2 a.m, arguing about whether risotto should be creamy or al dente. In my bed, looking at me the way you're looking at me right now, like you can't decide whether to run or fight. He crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, stopping just short of touching her. Lena could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell his cologne mixing with the lingering scent of saffron. She should step back, should establish boundaries, should remind him that she wasn't his to want. You can't just decide you want me and expect me to fall into your arms, she said, but her voice wavered. I don't expect anything. Vincent's hand came up slowly, giving her time to move away. When she didn't, his fingers traced the curve of her jaw with devastating gentleness. But I'm done pretending this is purely professional. I'm done watching you through cameras when I could be watching you like this. Lena's breath caught. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her body refused to cooperate. She was caught in Vincent Moretti's gravity, pulled towards something she knew would destroy her. You're using me, she whispered. For revenge against my father. I was. His thumb brushed across her lower lip. Now I'm just using you for entirely selfish reasons that have nothing to do with justice or the past. It was the worst possible thing he could have said, and somehow the most honest. Lena felt something crack inside her, some wall she'd built between them, some defense that couldn't hold against the intensity in his eyes. I hate you, she said again, and this time it felt even less true. I know, Vincent murmured. Then he kissed her. His mouth was surprisingly soft, coaxing rather than demanding. The kiss started gentle, almost questioning, giving Lena space to refuse. But she didn't refuse. She didn't pull away. Instead, she found herself leaning into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, kissing him back with all the complicated emotions churning inside her. Vincent's control shattered. His arms came around her, pulling her flush against him, and the kiss deepened into something fierce and desperate. Lena responded in kind, pouring weeks of tension and fear and unwanted attraction into the contact. She bit his lower lip and he groaned, his hands sliding into her hair, tilting her head to deepen the kiss further. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lena felt dizzy. Vincent's eyes had darkened to the color of storm clouds, his careful composure completely fractured. Stay, he said roughly. Tonight. Stay with me. Reality crashed back in. Lena stepped out of his arms, her whole body shaking. No, I can't. This is insane. You're my employer. You're using me for revenge. This is inevitable, Vincent finished. This was always going to happen, Lena. From the moment I saw you in that kitchen, exhausted and defiant and brilliant, from the moment you signed that contract, we were always going to end up here. That doesn't make it right. I've never claimed to be right. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration bleeding through his usual control. I'm offering you honesty. Raw, uncomfortable honesty. I want you. Not as part of a plan, not as strategy, just want. What you do with that is your choice. Lena backed toward the elevator, her lips still tingling from his kiss. I need to go. I need to think. Vincent didn't try to stop her. He just watched her retreat with an expression that might have been resignation or might have been patience. The offer stands, Lena. When you're ready to stop running, you know where to find me. The elevator doors closed on his knowing smile, and Lena collapsed against the wall, her heart racing. She touched her lips, still feeling the ghost of his mouth on hers. What had she just done? Back in her apartment, Lena paced the living room for hours, trying to make sense of the evening. Vincent Moretti had kissed her, had told her he wanted her, had stripped away all the pretense and left her with uncomfortable truth instead of comfortable lies. And she'd kissed him back. That was the part she couldn't reconcile. She was supposed to hate him, was supposed to endure this arrangement until her contract ended, then walk away without looking back. She wasn't supposed to feel her stomach flutter when he looked at her, wasn't supposed to want his hands on her skin, his mouth on hers, but she did, and that wanting terrified her more than anything else Vincent had done. The next 3 weeks passed in a haze of kitchen work and careful avoidance. Lena threw herself into Vittoria's preparation with renewed intensity, using exhaustion as a shield against the memory of Vincent's kiss. He continued his periodic visits to the restaurant, but maintained professional distance. No lingering looks, no loaded comments, nothing to suggest they'd ever been anything but employer and employee. The restraint was somehow worse than if he'd pushed. It left Lena constantly off balance, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Vittoria's soft opening was scheduled for 3 weeks before the official launch, a test run with invited guests who'd been sworn to secrecy. Lena spent the day before in a controlled panic, triple-checking every detail. The kitchen staff moved like a well-oiled machine now, responsive to her commands, trusting her vision. Gianna had become her right hand, translating Lena's sometimes frantic instructions into calm execution. Relax, Gianna said, watching Lena rearrange the mise en place for the 3rd time. Everything's perfect. The menu's solid. The team's ready. You're ready. What if I'm not? Lena's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted a stack of plates. What if this whole thing falls apart? Then we rebuild. Gianna gripped her shoulder firmly. But it won't fall apart. You're too good for that. Trust yourself, chef. The soft opening began at 7 p.m. 50 guests, all carefully selected by Vincent, food critics, restaurant owners, wealthy investors. The kind of people who could make or break Vittoria's reputation before it officially opened. Lena watched from the kitchen as they filed in, her stomach in knots. Vincent appeared at her station at 6:45, impeccable in a dark suit. Nervous? Terrified, Lena admitted. Good. Terror keeps you sharp. He studied the organized chaos of her prep station. I have confidence in you, Lena, more than you have in yourself. Easy for you to say. If this fails, you lose money. I lose everything. Vincent's expression hardened. If you think I'd let you fail after everything I've invested, you haven't been paying attention. But you won't fail. You're too stubborn for that. The first orders started coming in at 7:15. Lena fell into the rhythm of service, calling out orders, orchestrating the controlled chaos of a working kitchen. Everything she'd learned in culinary school, everything she'd absorbed at Aurelius, everything she'd practiced over the last 6 weeks. It all came together in a symphony of heat and precision. Ordering 2 agnolotti, 1 ossobuco, 3 pappardelle, she called. Yes, chef, the line cooks responded in unison. The kitchen moved like a single organism. Pans sizzled, pasta boiled, sauces reduced to perfect consistency. Lena plated each dish herself, making sure every element met her standards before it left the pass. Gianna expedited with ruthless efficiency, managing the timing so everything hit the dining room at the perfect temperature. An hour into service, Vincent appeared at the pass. The critics are impressed. The veal is getting particular praise. Lena didn't look up from the risotto she was plating. Don't jinx it. I'm not jinxing anything. I'm stating facts. He paused. You're extraordinary when you're in your element. Did you know that? Heat that had nothing to do with the kitchen crept up Lena's neck. Stop distracting me. Ordering 3 branzino, 2 pork, 1 vegetarian tasting, Miranda's voice came through from the dining room. Lena refocused, pushing thoughts of Vincent aside. There would be time to process his comments later. Right now, she had 50 people to feed. Service lasted until 10 p.m. By the time the last dessert went out, a panna cotta with blood orange that Gianna had perfected, Lena was exhausted and exhilarated in equal measure. The kitchen staff broke into spontaneous applause as she called the final order. We did it, Gianna said, grinning. We actually did it. Lena allowed herself a moment of pure relief. They'd executed flawlessly. Every dish had been perfect. The reviews would be good. She could feel it in her bones. Vincent was waiting when she finally emerged from the kitchen at 11 p.m. The dining room was empty now, staff cleaning up for the night. He'd loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves, the first crack in his usual armor she'd seen all evening. Walk with me, he said. It wasn't a question, but Lena was too tired to fight. They took the elevator down to street level, emerging into the cold November night. Manhattan glittered around them, alive even at this late hour. Vincent led her to a small park a block from the restaurant, finding a bench overlooking the street. You were magnificent tonight, he said finally. Every critic there will write glowing reviews. Vittoria will be the most sought-after reservation in the city within a month. Lena wrapped her coat tighter against the chill. You sound very sure of that. I am, because I watched you command that kitchen like you were born to it, because I tasted every dish that came out, and each one was better than the last. Because, he trailed off, something vulnerable crossing his face, because you've exceeded every expectation I had, and I had high expectations. Is this the part where you tell me I've earned my place? Lena's voice was sharp with exhaustion. Where you remind me how grateful I should be? No. Vincent turned to face her fully. This is the part where I admit that I've been wrong about a lot of things. About revenge, about control, about what I wanted from you. Lena's heart stuttered. What are you saying? I'm saying that watching you tonight, seeing you in your element, brilliant and fierce and completely yourself, made me realize something. His hand found hers on the bench between them. I don't want to own you, Lena. I don't want to control you or use you or fit you into some predetermined plan. I want to see what happens when you're free to be extraordinary. It was the last thing she'd expected him to say. Lena stared at their joined hands, her mind reeling. You built me a cage. A beautiful one, but still a cage. I know. His thumb traced circles on her palm. And I'm telling you that the door is open. You can walk away tomorrow if you want. I'll honor the financial commitments, your father's care, your salary, until you find something else. No strings, no revenge, just freedom. Lena pulled her hand away, standing up so fast she nearly lost her balance. Why? Why now? Vincent stood too, his expression more open than she'd ever seen it. Because keeping you here under duress means I'll never know if you stay by choice, and I've discovered that I need to know. I need to know if this thing between us, whatever it is, has any chance of being real. There is no thing between us, Lena said, but the lie felt hollow even as she spoke it. Isn't there? Vincent stepped closer, and Lena's breath caught. You kissed me back 3 weeks ago. You looked at me tonight like I mattered, like my opinion of your work actually meant something to you. That's not nothing, Lena. She wanted to deny it, wanted to throw his words back in his face and walk away with her pride intact, but she was tired of lying, even to herself. I don't trust you, she said instead. You've manipulated every aspect of my life. How am I supposed to believe this isn't just another strategy? You're not. Vincent's honesty was brutal. You have no reason to trust me. I've given you every reason not to, but I'm asking you to take a leap of faith anyway. Stay at Vittoria because you want to, not because you're trapped. And maybe, eventually, we can figure out what this is between us without all the leverage and manipulation in the way. Lena looked at him, really looked at him. Vincent Moretti, dangerous and controlled and offering her something that might be freedom or might be the most elaborate trap yet. She thought about her father's warnings, about the revenge that had started this whole arrangement. She thought about the kiss that still haunted her dreams. And she thought about tonight, standing in that kitchen, creating something beautiful, and knowing that Vincent was watching with pride in his eyes. I need time, she said finally, to think, to figure out what I actually want versus what you've made me think I want. Take all the time you need. Vincent's smile was sad. But know this, Lena, I'm not going anywhere. And I'm not giving up on the possibility of us, even if you decide to walk away. He left her standing in the park, cold and confused and more conflicted than ever. Lena watched him disappear into the night, then sank back onto the bench, her mind spinning. Vincent Moretti had just offered her freedom, the very thing she'd been desperate for since signing that contract. She could leave, could take her father's care and her experience and build a life completely separate from this complicated, dangerous man. So why did the thought of walking away feel like tearing out part of herself? Lena sat in the park until the cold became unbearable, watching the city move around her. Somewhere in a care facility across town, her father was alive because of Vincent's money. Somewhere in Tribeca, a restaurant bore the name of Vincent's murdered mother. Somewhere in the space between revenge and desire, Lena had lost the simple clarity of hate. She didn't know what she wanted anymore. Didn't know if what she felt for Vincent was real or just Stockholm Syndrome dressed up as attraction. Didn't know if she was making choices or still dancing to a tune he'd composed. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She wasn't ready to walk away. Not from Vittoria, not from the first real chance she'd had to prove herself. And maybe not from Vincent either, though she'd rather die than admit it out loud. The question was whether that made her brave or just hopelessly trapped in a cage so beautiful she couldn't see the bars anymore. Lena walked back to Moretti Tower through streets that felt different somehow, as if Vincent's offer had shifted the entire city on its axis. The doorman nodded as she entered, and she rode the elevator up to the 38th floor with her mind still churning through impossible choices. Freedom, he'd said, as if anything involving Vincent Moretti could ever be that simple. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she stood at her window watching the city lights blur and sharpen, until dawn painted the sky in shades of bruised purple. By the time her alarm went off at 5, she'd made a decision that felt less like choice and more like surrender. She would stay. Not because Vincent had trapped her, but because walking away from Vittoria meant walking away from herself. The restaurant was hers in ways that transcended contracts and revenge. She'd poured her soul into that kitchen, and she wasn't ready to let it go. But she would protect herself, would maintain boundaries, would remember that Vincent Moretti was dangerous even when he was being honest, maybe especially then. The resolution lasted exactly 4 days. Vittoria's official opening was a spectacular success. Critics praised the menu's innovation while respecting traditional techniques. Reservations filled up 3 months in advance within 48 hours of opening. Food bloggers declared it the most exciting new restaurant in Manhattan. Everything Lena had worked for was coming true, in ways she'd barely let herself imagine. Vincent kept his distance, true to his word. He attended the opening night, charming guests and critics with the ease of someone born to power, but he never approached Lena except to offer quiet congratulations before disappearing into the crowd. She told herself she was relieved, told herself his absence was exactly what she needed. She was lying. On the 5th night after opening, Lena stayed late to work on new menu items for the winter season. The kitchen was peaceful in a way it never was during service, just the hum of refrigeration units and the occasional clang of pots as she worked. She was so absorbed in perfecting a butternut squash agnolotti that she didn't hear the private entrance open. "You're here late," Vincent's voice came from behind her, and Lena's knife slipped, nearly catching her finger. "Don't sneak up on me when I'm holding sharp objects," she said, without turning around. "What are you doing here?" "I own the building. I'm allowed to visit." His footsteps approached slowly. "What are you working on?" Despite herself, Lena felt a flutter of excitement at sharing her work. "Winter menu development. I'm trying to balance the sweetness of the squash with sage brown butter, but the ratio isn't quite right yet." Vincent appeared beside her, studying the pasta she'd laid out on the marble counter. He'd shed his jacket somewhere, rolled his sleeves to his elbows, and she caught the scent of his cologne mixed with something darker, something that made her pulse quicken. "May I?" He gestured to the agnolotti waiting to be cooked. Lena hesitated, then nodded. She watched as Vincent boiled water, dropped in a few pieces of pasta, and cooked them with the casual competence he'd displayed at dinner weeks ago. He plated them simply, drizzled the brown butter sauce, and took a bite. "The sage is too aggressive," he said after a moment. "It's competing with the squash instead of enhancing it. You need something brighter to cut through the richness, lemon zest, maybe, or a touch of nutmeg." He was right. Lena grabbed a microplane and fresh nutmeg, grating a small amount into the remaining brown butter. She cooked another piece of pasta, tasted it, and felt the dish click into place. "Better," she admitted grudgingly. "I know." Vincent's smile was smug. "My mother was very particular about sage. She used to say it was like perfume. A little goes a long way, and too much ruins everything." It was the second time he'd mentioned his mother cooking with something approaching warmth. Lena set down her fork, studying him in the kitchen's harsh fluorescent light. "Tell me about her. The real her, not just the tragedy." Vincent's expression shuddered immediately. "Why?" "Because she's the reason we're here. Because this restaurant is named after her. Because I want to understand." Lena wiped her hands on her apron. "You know everything about me, Vincent. You've studied every corner of my life. I deserve to know something real about yours." For a long moment, she thought he'd refuse. Then he sighed, leaning against the counter with his arms crossed. "She was beautiful," he said quietly. "Not just physically, though she was that too. Beautiful in the way she saw the world, like everything held possibility. She loved cooking, loved feeding people, loved the way food could bring strangers together." His jaw tightened. "She also loved my father, which was her greatest mistake." "Why?" "Because Antonio Moretti was everything she wasn't, cold, calculating, violent when necessary. He built an empire on other people's fear, and she built a home trying to pretend that empire didn't exist." Vincent's hands clenched into fists. She lived in denial until denial got her killed. Lena moved closer without quite meaning to. "What happened? The real story, not just what my father told me." Vincent's eyes were distant, seeing something from decades past. "She witnessed a murder. One of my father's business associates killed a rival, and she walked in at the wrong moment. The smart thing would have been to pretend she saw nothing, but my mother was principled in ways that don't work in our world. She went to the police." "To my father?" "Yes, to Detective Robert Ward, who promised her protection in exchange for testimony." Vincent's voice turned bitter. She believed him, believed in the justice system, in doing the right thing. So she agreed to testify, and they put her in protective custody in our own home. Armed guards, surveillance, the whole production. Lena's stomach twisted, knowing how this story ended. Someone leaked the information, Vincent continued. Someone in the police department, probably on my father's payroll. Marcus Reeve came in through a window the guards weren't watching. My mother was in the kitchen making dinner, ossobuco with saffron risotto, the same dish I made for you, when he found her. His voice cracked slightly. I came home from school and found her body on the kitchen floor. She'd fought back. There was blood everywhere. Vincent? Lena reached for him instinctively. He jerked away from her touch, his control fracturing. I was 12 years old enough to understand that the police had failed her, that my father's world had killed her, that justice was a fairy tale people told themselves to sleep at night. Your father led the investigation. He promised me they'd find who did it, that someone would pay. Vincent's laugh was harsh. They never made an arrest. Marcus Reeve disappeared, probably with my father's help. The case went cold. And I learned that the only justice in this world is what you take for yourself. The pain in his voice was raw, unfiltered, and it made Lena's heart ache in ways she didn't want to acknowledge. She understood now, understood the rage that had driven him to find her, to build this elaborate revenge. Her father had failed his mother, and Vincent had spent decades unable to make that right. So you found me, she said softly. Your father's detective's daughter, perfect symmetry. Yes. Vincent met her eyes, and the vulnerability there nearly broke her. I watched you for months, Lena. Learned your routines, your struggles, your dreams. I told myself it was strategy. Find the pressure points. Exploit the desperation. Make Robert Ward watch his daughter become entangled with the son of the woman he failed to save. But something changed, Lena finished. Everything changed. Vincent moved closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. You weren't supposed to be real. You were supposed to be a symbol, a tool, a means to an end. But then I watched you fight for your father, sacrifice everything for someone who couldn't even protect you from the consequences of his own failures. I watched you take every terrible thing in your life and transform it into fuel. I watched you in that kitchen, creating beauty from nothing, and I... He stopped, jaw clenching. You what? Lena's voice came out as a whisper. I fell, Vincent said roughly. Somewhere between planning and execution, between revenge and reality, I fell for you. And I've been trying to figure out what the hell to do about that ever since. The confession hung between them, raw and dangerous. Lena's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the counter. This was the moment she should walk away, should protect herself from the inevitable destruction that came from wanting someone like Vincent Moretti. Instead, she closed the distance between them. This is insane, she said, her voice shaking. You manipulated my entire life. You used my father's guilt and my desperation to trap me here. I should hate you. You should, Vincent agreed. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. But do you? Lena closed her eyes, feeling tears she refused to let fall. I don't know what I feel anymore. You've twisted everything until I can't tell what's real and what's just Stockholm Syndrome. Then let me make it simple. Vincent's forehead pressed against hers, and Lena felt the tension vibrating through his body. I want you, not as revenge, not as strategy, just you, complicated, brilliant, stubborn you, and I'll spend however long it takes proving that this is real. How? The word came out broken. How do I trust anything you say when it all started as a lie? You don't, not yet. His lips brushed her temple, feather light. But maybe you let me try to earn it. Let me show you that what I feel for you has nothing to do with your father or my mother or anything except the fact that you're extraordinary, and I can't stop thinking about you. Lena opened her eyes, finding Vincent's face inches from hers. She saw the truth there, stark and undeniable. He meant every word. Whatever this thing between them was, it had transcended its ugly origins and become something neither of them knew how to handle. If I do this, she said slowly, if I give this a chance, you have to tell me everything. No more secrets, no more manipulation. Complete honesty, even when it hurts. Agreed. Vincent's response was immediate. Ask me anything. Did you pay someone to leak my father's schedule so you'd know exactly when I'd be most vulnerable? Yes. I had someone on the inside at Mount Sinai feeding me information about his condition. The honesty hurt, but Lena pressed on. Did you sabotage my other job opportunities so I'd have no choice but to accept your offer? Vincent's jaw tightened. Yes. I bought out the restaurant where you'd been scheduled for an interview and told the owner to rescind the offer. I paid off 2 other establishments to pass you over. Each admission was a small knife to the chest, but Lena forced herself to keep going. Have you been watching me through cameras this entire time, in my apartment? No. His answer was firm. I have security cameras in the restaurant, in the common areas of the building, but your apartment is private. I've never violated that space. It was a small mercy, but it mattered. Lena took a shaky breath. What was the plan? The original one, before things changed. What were you going to do with me? Vincent's expression darkened. I was going to keep you for the 5 years of your contract. Let your father watch you succeed under my control, knowing he could never undo what I'd done. Let him die, knowing that his failure had consequences that extended beyond himself. His hand dropped from her face. Then I was going to let you go with excellent references and enough money to start over and consider the debt paid. That's it? Just 5 years of psychological torture and then freedom? I told you I wasn't a good man, Lena. I'm capable of worse things than that, and I've done them without losing sleep. Vincent's honesty was brutal. But somewhere around week 3, when I watched you completely rebuild that menu because one dish wasn't perfect, I realized you deserved better than being collateral damage in someone else's war. Lena turned away, gripping the counter until her knuckles went white. She felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down at a drop that would either destroy her or teach her to fly. I need to know something else, she said, and I need you to be completely honest. Always. If I told you right now that I wanted to leave, wanted to walk away from Vittoria, from you, from all of this, would you let me go? The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then Vincent said quietly, Yes. It would kill me, but yes, I'd honor my promise. You'd be free. Lena turned to face him, searching his expression for any hint of deception. She found only raw honesty and something that looked like fear, the first time she'd ever seen Vincent Moretti afraid of anything. I don't want to leave, she admitted. And I hate that I don't want to leave. I hate that you've gotten under my skin, that I think about you when I should be thinking about work, that I kissed you back and wanted more. I hate that my father was right about me bending. Then hate me. Vincent's voice was rough. Hate me and stay anyway. Hate me and let me prove that some things that start wrong can still end up right. It was the worst logic Lena had ever heard. It was also the most honest thing anyone had ever offered her. She thought about her father's warnings, about the cage she'd walked into, about all the ways this could destroy her. Then she thought about Vincent teaching her the correct ratio of sage to brown butter, about the pride in his eyes when Vittoria succeeded, about the way he'd just laid himself bare, admitting to terrible things without flinching because she'd asked for honesty. If we do this, Lena said carefully, it's not because you own me or because I'm grateful for everything you've given me. It's because I'm choosing it. My choice, my terms. Understood. Vincent's expression was cautious, hopeful. What are your terms? Transparency. No more secrets about what you're planning or why. If you're going to be in my life, I get to see all of it. The good, the bad, the parts you think I can't handle. Lena held his gaze. And we tell my father, together. He deserves to know that this isn't just you using me anymore. Vincent flinched. He'll never accept it. Probably not. But I'm not asking his permission. I'm just done with lies. Lena crossed her arms. Those are my conditions. Take them or walk away. For a moment, Vincent just stared at her. Then, slowly, he smiled. A real smile. Unguarded and almost boyish. You're terrifying when you draw lines in the sand. Has anyone ever told you that? Not until now. Lena felt her own lips curve despite the gravity of what they were discussing. Do we have a deal? We have a deal. Vincent extended his hand, formal and somehow ridiculous given everything that had just passed between them. Lena shook it, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers, the strength in his grip. Then he pulled her forward and kissed her. This kiss was different from the desperate collision in his apartment. It was slower, deeper, full of promise, and something that felt dangerously close to reverence. Lena melted into it, her hands fisting in his shirt, letting herself feel everything she'd been fighting for weeks. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "I should let you finish working on the winter menu." "You should," Lena agreed, making no move to step away. "But I'm not going to." His hand slid down her back, pulling her closer. "I'm going to take you upstairs to my apartment and spend the rest of the night showing you exactly how not strategy this is." Heat pooled low in Lena's stomach. "That's extremely unprofessional." "Probably. Do you care?" She should. She should care about boundaries and professional distance and all the rational reasons this was a terrible idea. But standing in the kitchen where she'd built something real, wrapped in Vincent Moretti's arms, Lena found she didn't care at all. "No," she whispered. "Take me upstairs." They barely made it to the elevator before Vincent had her pressed against the wall, his mouth on her neck, his hands exploring with an urgency that matched her own. The ride to the 42nd floor took an eternity and no time at all. They stumbled into his apartment, shedding clothes between kisses, leaving a trail from the elevator to his bedroom. Later, tangled in sheets that probably cost more than her old monthly rent, Lena traced patterns on Vincent's chest and tried to process what had just happened. The sex had been intense, overwhelming, like everything else about Vincent Moretti. Now, in the quiet aftermath, reality was starting to creep back in. "What are you thinking?" Vincent's voice was rough, his hand running through her hair. "That I just slept with my boss. That my father is going to lose his mind. That I'm in way over my head." Lena propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him. "That I should probably regret this, and I don't." "Good." He pulled her down for a slow, thorough kiss. "Because I plan on making this a regular occurrence." Presumptuous. Honest. His fingers traced her spine, making her shiver. "I told you I wanted you, Lena. I meant it. This isn't a one-time thing for me." Lena settled back against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "We still need to tell my father. Soon." "I know." Vincent's arms tightened around her. "But maybe not tonight. Tonight, let's just be two people who want each other without all the complications." It was a nice fantasy, but Lana knew better. The complications were always there, woven into everything they did. Still, she let herself have this moment, this brief window of peace before the storm. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and for the first time since signing Vincent's contract, Lena didn't dream about cages. She woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and Vincent already dressed, standing at those windows with his phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, controlled, but she caught the edge of tension. "I don't care what he wants. Tell Marcus Reeve that if he contacts this office again, he'll regret it." A pause. "No, handle it yourself. I have more important priorities." Lena sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest. "Who's Marcus Reeve?" Vincent turned, surprise flickering across his face before smoothing into neutrality. "No one important. Business matter." "Vincent," she kept her voice level. "We agreed. No more secrets. Who is Marcus Reeve?" His jaw clenched. For a moment she thought he'd refuse to answer. Then he ended the call and crossed to sit on the edge of the bed. "Marcus Reeve is the man who killed my mother," he said quietly. "He disappeared after the murder, presumably with my father's help. I've spent years trying to find him, to make him pay for what he did. Recently, he's surfaced, trying to make contact, claiming he wants to talk." Ice flooded Lena's veins. Why would he want to talk? "I don't know. And I don't care." Vincent's voice was hard. "He took my mother from me. Whatever he has to say, it won't change that." Lena reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. "Maybe you should hear him out. Maybe there's more to the story than you know." "What more could there possibly be?" "He killed her. That's all that matters." "Is it?" Lena challenged. "Because from where I'm sitting, you've spent your entire adult life chasing revenge for something that happened when you were 12. Maybe understanding why it happened could help you finally let it go. Vincent's expression was thunderous. I don't want to let it go. I want justice. No, you want revenge. And there's a difference. Lena squeezed his hand. I'm not saying you should forgive him. I'm saying maybe you should at least know the truth before you decide what justice looks like. Why do you care? Because I care about you. The words came out before she could stop them, raw and honest. Because I don't want to watch you destroy yourself over the past when you finally have a chance at a future. Vincent stared at her for a long moment, emotions warring across his face. Then he stood abruptly, pulling his hand from hers. I need to go handle some things. Stay as long as you want. There's coffee in the kitchen. He was gone before Lena could respond, the apartment door closing with finality. She sat in his massive bed, surrounded by his scent, and felt the first cracks forming in the fragile thing they'd built last night. The next few days were tense. Vincent maintained professional distance at the restaurant, no longer lingering in the kitchen or offering input on her dishes. Lena told herself it was for the best. They needed boundaries anyway, but the absence of his presence felt like a loss she hadn't anticipated. She buried herself in work, developing the winter menu with fierce concentration. Gianna watched her with knowing eyes but said nothing, which Lena appreciated. The last thing she needed was commentary on her complicated relationship with their employer. On the fourth day, Lena's father called. We need to talk. Can you come to Evergreen this afternoon? Something in his tone made her stomach drop. Is everything okay? I'm fine. But there's something you need to know. He paused. It's about Vincent Moretti. About what really happened to his mother. Lena's hands went cold. Dad, what are you talking about? Just come, please. This isn't a conversation for the phone. She left Gianna in charge of the kitchen and took a car to Evergreen, her mind racing through possibilities. When she arrived, her father was in his room, looking better than he had in months, but troubled in ways that had nothing to do with cancer. What's going on? Lena asked, closing the door behind her. Robert Ward gestured to the chair beside his bed. Sit down. This is going to be difficult to hear. Lena sat, her heart pounding. You're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. You should be terrified of Vincent Moretti and whatever he's told you about his mother's death. Her father's hands trembled as he gripped the arms of his chair. Because he doesn't know the whole truth, and it's time someone told him. What truth? Her father took a shaky breath. Isabella Moretti wasn't just a witness to Marcus Reeves' crime. She was his lover. The words hit Lena like a physical blow. What? She was having an affair with Marcus Reeve, had been for over a year. She wanted to leave Antonio, wanted to run away with Marcus, but she was afraid. Antonio Moretti isn't the kind of man you leave and live, Robert's voice cracked. The murder she witnessed wasn't a business deal gone wrong. Marcus killed that man because the victim had found out about the affair and threatened to tell Antonio. Isabella was there because she and Marcus were meeting in secret. Lena felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. That doesn't make sense. Why would she go to the police? Why would she testify against her own lover? Because Marcus panicked. After the murder, he told Isabella that they had to end things, that it was too dangerous to continue. She was devastated, heartbroken. So she went to the police with a different story, that she'd witnessed a crime and feared for her life. It was her way of forcing Marcus to stay, to keep him close through the investigation and trial. And you knew this? Lena's voice rose. You knew she was lying about the circumstances, and you still put her in protective custody. I knew something was off about her story, yes, but I didn't know the full truth until after she was dead. Her father's eyes were haunted. Marcus Reeve came to me 3 days after Isabella's murder. He was a wreck, guilt-ridden, broken. He confessed everything, the affair, the real reason for the murder, the fact that he'd killed Isabella because she was going to expose their relationship and get them both killed. Lena stood up, pacing the small room. He killed her? Vincent thinks Marcus killed her, but Marcus did kill her, but not for the reasons Vincent believes. Not on Antonio's orders, or because she was going to testify. Robert's voice was barely above a whisper. He killed her because she told him she was going to confess everything to Antonio, the affair, the murder, all of it. She was going to destroy both their lives out of spite because he'd tried to end things. So Marcus killed her to protect himself. The room spun. Lena gripped the back of the chair for support. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't you arrest him? I tried, but Marcus Reeve had connections, powerful ones. Antonio Moretti's people made him disappear before I could build a case, and the official story became that Isabella was a martyred witness killed for doing the right thing. Her father's laugh was bitter. Antonio never knew his wife had betrayed him. Vincent grew up believing his mother was a saint killed for seeking justice, and I kept the truth buried because what good would it have done to destroy that illusion? What good? Lena's voice shook with fury. Vincent has spent his entire life seeking revenge for a crime he doesn't even understand. He's built his whole identity around avenging a mother who wasn't who he thought she was. I know. Tears tracked down Robert Ward's face. And I've carried that guilt for 28 years. But Lena, you need to understand, telling Vincent the truth now won't set him free. It'll destroy him, everything he believes about his mother, about justice, about the foundation of who he is. It's built on a lie. Finding out now could break him completely. Lena sank back into the chair, her mind reeling. She thought about Vincent's pain when he'd described finding his mother's body, about the restaurant named Victory, as if opening it could somehow win a battle that had been lost decades ago, about the way he'd dedicated his life to revenge against a man who'd actually been his mother's lover. Marcus Reeve contacted him, she said numbly. Recently. Trying to talk. Vincent refused. Her father went pale. He can't meet with Marcus. If Marcus tells him the truth, then Vincent deserves to know. Lena stood, her decision crystallizing. I'm not going to be part of another lie, Dad. Not even to protect him. Lena, please, think about what you're doing. I have. She moved to the door, then paused. You kept this secret to protect Vincent from pain. But all you did was trap him in a false narrative that's poisoned his entire life. I won't do that to him. I won't be another person who lies to protect him from truth. She left before her father could respond, her hands shaking as she called for a car. On the drive back to Manhattan, Lena tried to organize her thoughts, to figure out how to tell Vincent that everything he believed about his mother was a lie. There was no good way. There was only the truth, sharp and terrible and necessary. She found Vincent in his office at Moretti Tower, staring at his computer screen without really seeing it. He looked up when she entered, surprise flickering across his face. Lena, I wasn't expecting we need to talk. She closed the door behind her, leaning against it. About your mother, about Marcus Reeve, about everything. Vincent's expression shuddered. I told you, I don't want to discuss. Your mother was having an affair with Marcus Reeve. The words came out blunt, without preamble. The murder she witnessed was directly connected to that affair. And Marcus killed her not because she was going to testify, but because she threatened to expose their relationship to your father. The color drained from Vincent's face. What did you just say? Lena crossed to him, forcing herself to meet his eyes as she repeated what her father had told her. Every word felt like a betrayal, but she pushed through, giving him all of it. The affair, the real motivation for the murder, the lie that had shaped his entire life. When she finished, Vincent sat frozen, his hands gripping the arms of his chair so hard his knuckles were white. For a long moment he said nothing, then, very quietly, You're lying. I'm not. My father told me today. He's known since right after your mother died, and he's been carrying the guilt ever since. Lena knelt beside his chair, taking his cold hands in hers. Vincent, I'm so sorry, but you needed to know the truth. Get out. His voice was flat, emotionless. Vincent, get out of my office. Get out of my building. I don't want to see you right now. He pulled his hands from hers, standing abruptly. You come in here and destroy everything I believed about my mother, and you expect me to what? Thank you for the truth? I expect you to understand that I'm doing this because I care about you. Lena stood too, refusing to back down. You've been chasing a ghost, seeking revenge for a crime that never happened the way you thought it did. Don't you see? The truth might actually set you free. Vincent's laugh was harsh, broken. Free? You think knowing my mother was unfaithful, that she got herself killed through her own selfish actions, that everything I've built to honor her memory is based on a lie. You think that sets me free? He moved to the window, his back rigid. You've just taken the one pure thing in my life and contaminated it. Congratulations." Tears burned Lena's eyes. "It was already contaminated, Vincent. The lie was the contamination. I just exposed it." "Well, thank you for that." His voice dripped sarcasm. "Now please leave. I need to be alone." Lena wanted to stay, to fight, to make him understand, but she recognized the walls slamming down, the defenses rising. Vincent Moretti was retreating to the only place he knew how to be, alone, armored, untouchable. So she left, knowing she'd just broken something fragile and precious between them, knowing he might never forgive her for it, but also knowing she had made the only choice she could live with. The truth beneath desire was always complicated, but lies, even beautiful ones, destroyed from the inside out. And Lena refused to watch Vincent destroy himself over fiction when reality, however painful, was finally within reach. 3 days passed without a word from Vincent. Lena threw herself into Vittoria's kitchen with desperate intensity, using work as armor against the ache that had taken up permanent residence in her chest. The winter menu was nearly complete, each dish a small masterpiece born from sleepless nights, and the need to create something beautiful when everything else felt broken. Gianna watched her with increasing concern, finally cornering her on the third evening after the last customer had left. "Whatever's going on with you and Moretti, it's affecting the staff," the sous chef said bluntly. "They can feel the tension, and you look like you haven't slept since Monday." "I'm fine," Lena lied, scrubbing a already clean counter with unnecessary force. "You're destroying that marble." Gianna took the cloth from her hands. "Talk to me, or don't. But stop pretending you're holding it together when you're clearly falling apart." Lena's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the counter. "I told him something he needed to hear, something true and terrible, and now he won't speak to me. Men are idiots when it comes to uncomfortable truths." Gianna's voice softened. "But Moretti's not just any man. He's the kind who builds walls instead of bridges when he's hurt. Give him time." "What if time doesn't fix this? What if I broke something that can't be repaired?" Gianna studied her with sharp eyes. "You love him." It wasn't a question, but Lena answered anyway. "I don't know, maybe. Is it love when it started with manipulation, when half the time I still can't tell if what I feel is real or just Stockholm Syndrome?" "Love is messy, Chef. It's never as clean as we want it to be." Gianna squeezed her shoulder. "But I've seen the way he looks at you when you're not watching. That's not manipulation. That's a man who's in way over his head and doesn't know how to handle it." Lena wanted to believe that. Wanted to think that the connection between her and Vincent was real, that it could survive the truth she'd forced him to face. But 3 days of silence felt like an eternity, and her hope was wearing thin. She was locking up the restaurant just after midnight when a black SUV pulled up to the curb. Her heart jumped, thinking it might be Vincent, but the man who emerged was unfamiliar, older, maybe 60, with gray hair and a face that had seen too much violence. He moved with the careful deliberation of someone who'd learned to anticipate danger. "Lena Ward?" His voice was rough, like gravel over concrete. Every instinct screamed danger. Lena's hand moved to her phone. "Who's asking?" "My name is Marcus Reeve." He held up his hands, showing they were empty. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just need 5 minutes of your time." The name hit her like a punch to the gut. Marcus Reeve. The man who'd killed Vincent's mother. The man whose affair had destroyed everything Vincent believed about his family. "You need to leave," Lena said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Now." "Please, I know Vincent won't see me, but I've been following the situation and I know you're important to him." Marcus took a cautious step closer. There are things he needs to understand, things that might help him finally let go of the past. "You killed his mother. You don't get to help him with anything." "I did kill her." Marcus's face crumpled with genuine anguish. "And I've lived with that guilt every single day for 28 years. But the story isn't as simple as Vincent believes. And if someone doesn't tell him the truth, all of it, he'll spend the rest of his life destroying himself over a woman who is already destroying him." Despite every logical reason to walk away, Lena found herself curious. "What do you mean?" Isabella Moretti wasn't the Saint Vincent remembers. She was complicated, damaged, capable of cruelty when she felt cornered. Marcus's hands shook slightly. I loved her. That's the truth I can't escape. But loving her was like loving a hurricane, beautiful and destructive in equal measure. Why should I believe anything you say? Because I have nothing to gain from lying. Antonio Moretti died 5 years ago. The people who helped me disappear are gone. I came back to New York to face whatever consequences are left. Marcus pulled an envelope from his jacket. These are letters Isabella wrote to me. I've kept them all these years. They tell the real story. Her words, not mine. Give them to Vincent. Let him see who his mother really was. Lena stared at the envelope like it might bite. He'll never read them. Maybe not, but he should have the choice. Marcus set the envelope on the hood of the SUV, backing away. I know you care about him. I can see it in the way you're defending him even now. If you really want to help Vincent, give him the truth. All of it, even the parts that hurt. He was gone before Lena could respond, disappearing into the night like a ghost. She stood frozen on the sidewalk, staring at the envelope. Every instinct told her to throw it away, to protect Vincent from more pain. But she'd already made her choice about lies versus truth. She picked up the envelope with trembling hands. The letters were in Italian, written in feminine script on expensive stationery. Lena couldn't read most of them, but she recognized enough words to understand the general content. Love, fear, desperation, plans to run away. And toward the end, anger, threats, the deterioration of a relationship turning toxic. The last letter was dated 2 days before Isabella's death. Lena had it translated using her phone, and the words made her stomach turn. Isabella had threatened to tell Antonio everything if Marcus didn't agree to run away with her immediately. She'd written about using her planned testimony as leverage, about destroying Marcus's life if he abandoned her. The letter was manipulative, cruel, nothing like the noble victim Vincent believed his mother to be. Lena sat in her apartment until dawn, reading and rereading the translations, trying to decide what to do. Vincent deserved to see these, but would they help or just cause more damage? Her phone buzzed at 6 a.m. with a text from an unknown number. Penthouse, now. We need to talk. VM. Lena's hands shook as she showered and dressed, tucking the envelope of letters into her bag. She had no idea what Vincent wanted to discuss, but she wasn't going to hide Marcus Reeves' visit or the letters. No more secrets, even when the truth cut like glass. She found Vincent on his penthouse balcony, despite the December cold. He was dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, his hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked exhausted, haunted, nothing like the controlled man who'd first offered her a job in Aurelius's kitchen. You look terrible, Lena said, stepping onto the balcony. I haven't slept in 3 days. Vincent didn't turn around. I've been trying to process what you told me, trying to reconcile the mother I remember with the woman who would betray my father, who would get herself killed through her own selfish choices. Vincent, let me finish. He finally faced her, and the pain in his eyes nearly broke her. I hated you for telling me. I wanted to believe you were lying, that it was some elaborate manipulation, but I know you're not. You're incapable of that kind of deception. I'm sorry, Lena said quietly. I know it hurt, but I couldn't let you keep chasing a ghost. I met with Marcus Reeve last night. The words dropped like stones between them. Lena's breath caught. What? He contacted me again. After 3 days of spiraling, I decided I needed to hear his version, needed to know if what your father said was true. Vincent's laugh was bitter. It was worse than true. Marcus told me everything, the affair, my mother's threats, the way she manipulated him until he felt trapped enough to kill her. He showed me evidence, phone records, hotel receipts, photographs I wish I'd never seen. I have something too. Lena pulled out the envelope with shaking hands. Marcus found me last night. He gave me these letters your mother wrote to him. I had them translated. Vincent, they confirm everything, the affair, the manipulation, all of it. Vincent took the envelope mechanically, pulling out the letters. His face went ashen as he read, and Lena watched something fundamental break inside him. When he finally looked up, tears tracked down his face, the first time she'd ever seen him cry. She wasn't who I thought she was, he whispered. Everything I believed about her, about what happened, it was all a lie. Lena moved to him instinctively, wrapping her arms around him as he shattered. Vincent collapsed against her, his body shaking with sobs he'd probably been holding back for days. She held him on that freezing balcony, letting him purge 28 years of grief built on false foundations. "I'm sorry," she murmured into his hair. "I'm so sorry you had to learn this way." "You were right to tell me." His voice was muffled against her shoulder. I don't know who I am without that anger, without the need for revenge. It's been the driving force of my entire adult life." "Then maybe it's time to figure out who you are without it." Lena pulled back enough to see his face. "You're more than your mother's death, Vincent. You're more than revenge and manipulation and control. You're the man who taught me about sage ratios, who named a restaurant after victory because you believed in justice, who fell for someone you were supposed to use and chose honesty instead." "I don't know how to let it go." Vincent's hands gripped her waist like she was the only solid thing in his world. "The anger has been my compass for so long. Without it, I'm lost." "Then we'll figure it out together." Lena cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "But first, you need to make a choice. You can hold on to the past, the real, complicated, messy past, and let it keep poisoning you. Or you can choose to move forward, to build something new instead of tearing down what's already gone. With you?" The question was vulnerable, hopeful. "If you want me, if you can accept that I'm going to keep telling you hard truths when you need to hear them, that I won't let you hide behind walls or manipulation or carefully constructed lies." Lena's voice was fierce. "I'm not asking you to be perfect, Vincent. I'm asking you to be real." Vincent kissed her then, desperate and raw, and nothing like the controlled passion they'd shared before. This was need stripped down to its essence, two broken people clinging to each other in the wreckage of everything they thought they knew. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "I need to make things right, with your father, with Marcus, with all the people I've hurt while chasing a revenge that was based on lies." "Starting with my father," Lena agreed. "We need to talk to him together. He needs to know about us, about what we've learned, about everything." Vincent nodded, and Lena saw determination replacing the devastation in his eyes. "Today. We'll go today." They drove to Evergreen in silence, hands clasped between them. Lena felt the tension rolling off Vincent in waves as they rode the elevator to her father's floor. Robert Ward was in his room, reading, but he looked up sharply when they entered together. "Lena and Vincent Moretti." Her father's voice was carefully neutral. "I wasn't expecting both of you." "We need to talk, Dad. All of us." Lena pulled a chair close to his bed while Vincent remained standing, his posture rigid. "About Mom's death, about the lies, about everything." Robert Ward's gaze moved between them, settling on their joined hands with understanding and resignation. "You told him. I told him what you told me. Then Marcus Reeve told him the rest, and gave me letters that confirmed it all." Lena squeezed Vincent's hand. "We know the truth now, all of it." Her father closed his eyes. "Vincent, I'm sorry. I should have told you years ago, but I convinced myself that protecting you from the truth was the right thing to do." "You were wrong." Vincent's voice was tight with barely controlled emotion. "You let me build my entire life around a lie. Let me become someone I might not have been if I'd known the truth about my mother." "I know. And I've carried that guilt every day." Robert opened his eyes, meeting Vincent's gaze directly. "I failed your mother. Not just by failing to protect her, but by failing to give you the truth about who she really was. I'm sorry doesn't begin to cover that, but it's all I have." Vincent was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he said, "I've spent 28 years hating you for letting my mother die, hating the system for not giving her justice, hating myself for not being there to save her." His jaw clenched. "Now I don't know what to feel. The anger that's defined me is suddenly hollow because the person I was avenging wasn't who I thought she was." "So feel hollow," Lena said quietly. "Feel lost and confused and angry about being lied to. But don't let it consume you the way the old anger did." "She's right," Robert said. "I let my guilt consume me. It destroyed my marriage, damaged my relationship with Lena, turned me into someone who chose comfortable lies over hard truths. Don't make my mistakes, son. Vincent flinched at the word son, but he didn't pull away from Lena's hand. I used your daughter for revenge, manipulated her life, trapped her in a contract designed to hurt you. How do you not want to kill me for that? Because I see the way she looks at you. Robert's voice was tired but honest. And I see the way you look at her. Whatever started as revenge has become something else. Something real. Am I happy about it? No. Do I trust you? Not yet. But Lena's an adult who can make her own choices, even ones I think might hurt her. Dad, Lena started. Let me finish. Her father held up a hand. Vincent, I'm going to say this once. If you hurt my daughter, if you manipulate her or use her or treat her as anything less than the extraordinary woman she is, I will find a way to destroy you, even from my deathbed. Are we clear? Crystal. Vincent's lips quirked despite the gravity of the conversation. For what it's worth, Detective Ward, I have no intention of hurting her. She's the only real thing in my life. Good. Robert settled back against his pillows, suddenly looking every one of his 60 years. Now, what are you going to do about Marcus Reeve? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Vincent's hand tightened on Lena's. I don't know yet, he admitted. Part of me still wants revenge, wants to make him pay for killing my mother, regardless of the circumstances. But another part knows that he's been paying for it every day since it happened. That he loved her, even if that love turned toxic. That punishing him won't change anything. Revenge won't bring her back, Robert said quietly. It won't undo the lies or the pain. It'll just perpetuate the cycle. I know. Vincent's voice cracked slightly. But knowing that and letting it go are two different things. Lena stood, moving to face Vincent directly. You don't have to decide today. You don't have to forgive him or forget what he did. But you do have to decide whether you're going to let this destroy the future you could have. Whether you're going to let your mother's mistakes keep defining your life. Vincent looked at her for a long moment, and Lena saw the war raging behind his eyes. Anger versus acceptance, justice versus mercy, the past versus the possibility of something better. I need time, he said finally. Time to process all of this. Time to figure out who I am without the anger driving me. Take all the time you need. Lena touched his face gently. I'm not going anywhere. They stayed at Evergreen for another hour, talking through the tangled history that had brought them all to this point. Robert shared details about the investigation he'd never told anyone, about the guilt that had eaten at him for decades. Vincent talked about growing up in the shadow of his mother's death, about the way his father had used that tragedy to justify his own brutality. It was painful, honest, necessary. And when they finally left, Lena felt like something fundamental had shifted. Not healed, healing would take longer, but shifted toward the possibility of healing. In the car back to Manhattan, Vincent said quietly, I need to see Marcus Reeve again. Need to have a real conversation, not just him confessing and me listening. Do you want me to come with you? No, this is something I need to do alone. He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. But knowing you'll be waiting when I'm done makes it bearable. Vincent arranged to meet Marcus Reeve the next evening at a neutral location, a quiet bar in Brooklyn that catered to people who valued privacy. Lena waited in her apartment, trying to work on menu notes, but mostly just pacing and checking her phone every 5 minutes. 3 hours after he had left, Vincent finally returned. He looked exhausted, but somehow lighter, as if he'd set down a weight he'd been carrying for decades. How did it go? Lena asked, pulling him into the apartment. We talked, really talked, for the first time without me wanting to kill him. Vincent sank onto the couch, pulling Lena down beside him. He told me about my mother, the real her, not the sanitized version I'd built in my head. About how magnetic she was, how passionate, how capable of both incredible kindness and calculated cruelty. He told me about the affair, about how it started as comfort and became obsession, about the night he killed her, how she'd threatened to destroy both their lives, how he'd acted in panic and fear and has regretted it every moment since. And, Lena prompted gently, and I believe him. I hate that I believe him, but I do. Vincent's head fell back against the couch. My mother wasn't a villain or a saint. She was just a complicated, flawed person who made terrible choices that got her killed. And Marcus is just a man who loved the wrong person and paid for it by becoming a murderer. What are you going to do? Nothing. The word was quiet but final. I'm not going to punish him or forgive him or seek any kind of closure. I'm just going to let it be. Let him live with his guilt the way your father has lived with his. Let the past stay in the past. Lena studied his face, seeing the genuine peace there despite the exhaustion. How do you feel? Empty, Vincent admitted. But it's a clean empty, not the hollow ache I've been carrying, like I've finally put down something I was never meant to carry in the first place. He turned to face her fully. Thank you for forcing me to see the truth, for not letting me hide in comfortable lies. That's what you signed up for when you decided to be with me, Lena said, managing a small smile. Uncomfortable truths and no bullshit. Best decision I ever made. Vincent pulled her close, kissing her with a tenderness that made her chest ache. I love you, Lena Ward. I know I have no right to. I know it's too soon and too complicated and built on the worst possible foundation. But I love you anyway. The words hit her like a tidal wave. Lena had known, on some level, that her feelings for Vincent had crossed over from complicated attraction into something deeper. But hearing him say it first, raw and vulnerable and absolutely certain, made it real in a way she couldn't deny. I love you too, she whispered. Even though you're infuriating and controlling and you manipulated my entire life. Even though this should never work and probably shouldn't even be happening. I love you. Vincent kissed her again, deeper this time, and Lena felt all the tension of the past week dissolve. They stayed wrapped around each other on that couch for hours, talking through everything that had happened, planning for a future that no longer had to revolve around revenge. I want to rename the restaurant, Vincent said suddenly. Vittoria was about victory over the past, but that's not what I want anymore. What do you want? Something that looks forward instead of backward. Something that honors what we're building together instead of what I lost alone. He traced patterns on her palm. What would you name it? Lena thought for a moment, then smiled. Rinascita, rebirth. Vincent's expression softened. Perfect. We'll have new signage made. Announce the change as part of the winter menu launch. A fresh start for everyone. They fell asleep on the couch, tangled together, the future spreading out before them like an unwritten menu waiting to be created. For the first time since Lena had signed Vincent's contract, she felt like she had a real choice in what came next. Not freedom from him, but freedom with him. To build something neither of them had planned, but both of them needed. The past still existed, complicated and painful and impossible to erase. But it no longer had the power to define their future. That was theirs to create, one honest choice at a time. And that choice finally set them both free. The transformation of Vittoria into Rinascita happened over the course of 2 weeks, and Lena watched Vincent throw himself into the project with an intensity that was both familiar and entirely new. This wasn't the controlled obsession of a man seeking revenge. This was the focused passion of someone building something that mattered, creating rather than destroying. The new signage went up on a cold January morning, elegant script spelling out Rinascita against brushed copper that caught the winter sunlight. Lena stood on the sidewalk with Vincent, their breath misting in the frigid air, and felt something profound settle in her chest. It's perfect, she said, lacing her fingers through his. It's a beginning. Vincent's arm came around her waist, pulling her close. Speaking of which, I have something for you. He pulled an envelope from his coat pocket, and Lena's stomach clenched instinctively. Too many envelopes lately had contained revelations that shattered worlds. But when she opened this one, she found a single sheet of paper, a contract termination agreement. What is this? Her hands trembled as she read the legal language. Your freedom, if you want it. Vincent's voice was steady, but she could hear the undercurrent of fear. I told you the door was open. This makes it official. No penalties, no obligations beyond what you choose. Your father's medical care continues regardless. Your salary continues until you decide what you want to do next. And if you want to walk away from me, from Rena Sita, from all of it, you can. Lena stared at the document that represented everything she'd thought she wanted when this all began. Complete freedom from Vincent Moretti's control. The ability to build a life on her own terms, without the shadow of manipulation and revenge hanging over everything. She thought about the cage he'd built for her, golden and beautiful and suffocating. Then she thought about the past 2 weeks, watching him dismantle that cage piece by piece, watching him choose honesty and vulnerability over control. What if I don't want to leave? The words came out quiet but certain. Vincent's expression flickered with hope and something deeper. Then we tear up this contract and write a new one. Equal partnership in Rinashita, your name on the deed, your vision shaping the future. Not employee and employer, partners. Partners, Lena repeated, testing the word. It felt right in a way the original contract never had. I want legal review. I want everything in writing. I want protection for both of us if this relationship falls apart. Absolutely. Whatever you need to feel safe. Vincent took the termination agreement from her hands, tearing it in half. I'm done making unilateral decisions about your life, Lena. From now on, we build this together or we don't build it at all. The gesture was symbolic, reckless, and entirely Vincent. Lena found herself laughing despite the gravity of the moment. You just destroyed a legal document without making copies. I have copies. I'm obsessive, not stupid. He grinned, and Lena saw the man he might have been if revenge hadn't shaped his entire adult life. Lighter, more open, capable of joy. Come on, we have a restaurant to run and a partnership agreement to draft. They spent the next week working with lawyers to create a contract that protected both of them while acknowledging the complicated reality of their relationship. Lena insisted on clauses that prevented Vincent from using his financial power to control her decisions. Vincent insisted on clauses that prevented either of them from walking away without proper transition periods for the restaurant. It was thorough, honest, and built on the assumption that they were both capable of hurting each other if they weren't careful. This is the most pessimistic partnership agreement I've ever drafted, the lawyer said, sliding the final version across the table. You've basically planned for every possible way this could fail. That's the point, Lena said, signing her name with steady hands. We're going in with eyes open. Vincent signed beside her, and just like that, she became a full partner in Rinasita. Not a chef working for someone else's vision, but a co-owner building something that belonged to both of them. The winter menu launch happened 2 weeks later, and the response was overwhelming. Critics praised the evolution of the restaurant's concept, noting that the food felt more personal, more daring than the already excellent opening menu. Reservations extended 6 months out. Food publications started calling Rinasita one of the most exciting restaurants in New York. Lena should have been thrilled, and she was, mostly. But success brought its own complications. The kitchen staff, while professional, struggled with the shift in power dynamics. Some resented her elevation from hired chef to co-owner. Others whispered about her relationship with Vincent, making assumptions about how she'd really earned her partnership. Gianna remained her staunchest ally, but even she pulled Lena aside one evening after service with concern in her eyes. The line cooks are talking, she said bluntly, saying you slept your way into ownership, that the partnership is just Moretti keeping his mistress happy. Lena's jaw clenched. She'd expected this, had armored herself against it, but hearing it confirmed still stung. What do you think? I think you're the most talented chef I've worked with, and you've earned every bit of your success. Gianna's voice was fierce. But I also think you need to address this before it becomes a real problem. The kitchen runs on respect, and right now, some people don't respect the situation. She was right. Lena had been so focused on the legal and personal aspects of her partnership with Vincent that she'd neglected the human element, the staff who needed to believe in her leadership. The next morning, she called a kitchen meeting before service. Every member of the team assembled in the dining room, curiosity and wariness written across their faces. Vincent offered to attend, but Lena refused. This was something she needed to handle alone. I know what some of you are saying, she began, standing at the front of the room with her arms crossed, that I didn't earn my partnership, that I'm here because I'm sleeping with Vincent Moretti, not because of my skills. The staff shifted uncomfortably. A few had the grace to look ashamed. Here's the truth, Lena continued. Yes, I'm in a relationship with Vincent. Yes, our situation is complicated and probably breaks every professional boundary that exists, but my partnership isn't a gift or a consolation prize. It's a legal arrangement that protects both of us in this restaurant. I have 50% ownership. My name is on the deed, and I've invested every bit of skill I have into making this menu exceptional. She moved through the room, making eye contact with each person. If you can't respect that, if you can't separate my personal life from my professional capabilities, then you don't belong in this kitchen. I need people who trust my vision and my leadership, not people who are constantly questioning whether I deserve to be here. How do we know you won't bail when the relationship falls apart? One of the line cooks, a young guy named Marco, asked the question others were clearly thinking. You don't, Lena said honestly. Just like I don't know if any of you will bail when you get better offers or decide this isn't the right fit. We're all taking risks by being here. But I can promise you this. I'm committed to Renacita's success, regardless of what happens in my personal life. This restaurant matters to me in ways that have nothing to do with Vincent Moretti. What about when he starts controlling everything? Another voice, one of the prep cooks. Men like Moretti don't give up power. Eventually, he'll want final say on everything, and you'll either fight him or cave. Either way, we get caught in the middle. Then hold me accountable, Lena challenged. If you see me making decisions based on keeping Vincent happy instead of what's best for the kitchen, call me out. I want a team that pushes back when I'm wrong, not one that just goes along to keep the peace. Gianna stood up from where she'd been sitting in the back. I've worked with Chef Ward since before Moretti offered her this opportunity. I've watched her grow from someone scrubbing dishes to someone who can command a kitchen with the best of them. Her relationship with Moretti is complicated, yes, but her talent is undeniable. I'm staying. Anyone who wants to leave can go now with good references and no hard feelings. No one moved. Slowly, the tension in the room began to ease. Marco stood up, extending his hand to Lena. I'm sorry, Chef. I was out of line. Lena shook his hand firmly. Apology accepted. Now let's get ready for service and show this city why Renacita deserves every bit of hype it's getting. The meeting didn't solve everything, but it cleared the air. Over the following weeks, Lena felt the kitchen staff's trust slowly rebuilding. She made a point of being more visible, more available, more willing to explain her decisions and accept feedback. It was exhausting, but necessary. Vincent watched from the sidelines, offering support but never interference. He'd learned, finally, that Lena needed space to establish her own authority. Their relationship continued to evolve, finding a balance between personal intimacy and professional boundaries. But the real test came 3 months after the partnership agreement was signed, when Robert Ward's condition suddenly deteriorated. Lena got the call at 2 in the morning. Her father had been rushed to the hospital with complications from the cancer treatment. By the time she arrived at Mount Sinai, he was in the ICU, his body finally succumbing to the disease that had been eating away at him for years. Vincent appeared at the hospital an hour later, having been called by the care facility. He found Lena in the waiting room, staring blankly at a wall. How bad? He asked quietly, sitting beside her. Bad? They're saying days, maybe a week if we're lucky. Lena's voice was hollow. All those treatments, all that money, all that time bought, and it still ends like this. I'm sorry. Vincent took her hand and Lena clung to it like a lifeline. He wants to see you, she said. Specifically asked for you. Vincent looked surprised. Me? Why? I don't know, but he was insistent. Lena stood on shaky legs. Come on. Whatever he needs to say it while he still can. They were allowed into the ICU together, and Lena's heart broke at how small her father looked in the hospital bed, tubes and monitors obscuring the strong man who'd raised her. But Robert Ward's eyes were clear when he saw them, alert despite the morphine. Vincent, he rasped, come closer. Vincent approached the bed warily, and Lena saw her father gesture to a bag on the bedside table. Take it, open it. Vincent pulled out an old leather journal, worn and water-stained. What is this? My case notes. From Isabella's murder investigation. Robert's breathing was labored. Everything I knew, everything I suspected, everything I was too much of a coward to tell you, it's all there. Dad, you don't have to... Lena started. Yes, I do. Her father's hand found hers weakly. I've spent 28 years carrying guilt that wasn't entirely mine to carry. I made mistakes, yes, but I also tried to do the right thing in an impossible situation. I want Vincent to know that. Want him to have the full picture, not just Marcus Reeves' version or mine. Vincent clutched the journal, something vulnerable crossing his face. Why give this to me now? Because I'm dying, and I don't want to take this to my grave. Robert's eyes moved between Lena and Vincent. You two have found something real together, something that transcends all the pain and manipulation that brought you together. Don't let my guilt or your mother's mistakes poison that. Let the past finally rest. Thank you, Vincent said, and Lena heard genuine emotion in his voice. For this, for raising an extraordinary daughter, for finally trusting me with the truth. Don't thank me yet. Read the journal first. You might hate me all over again. Robert managed a weak smile. But at least you'll hate me for the right reasons. They stayed with him for another hour, until the nurses insisted he needed rest. In the hallway, Vincent pulled Lena into his arms, and she finally let herself break. All the fear and grief she'd been holding back poured out in racking sobs against his chest. I'm not ready, she gasped between sobs. I'm not ready to lose him. I know. Vincent's hand stroked her hair, his voice rough with his own emotion. But you have time to say goodbye. That's more than I got with my mother. Use it well. Robert Ward held on for 6 more days. Lena spent every moment she could at his bedside, talking about memories from her childhood, about the restaurant, about her plans for the future. Vincent visited daily, sometimes sitting with Robert while Lena caught a few hours of sleep, sometimes bringing food that Lena couldn't eat but appreciated anyway. On the 6th day, with Lena holding his hand and Vincent standing quietly in the corner, Robert Ward took his last breath. It was peaceful, painless, surrounded by the daughter he loved, and the complicated man who'd somehow become part of their family. Lena felt the moment he left, felt the absence like a physical thing. She sat with his body for a long time, saying goodbye to the man who'd sacrificed so much for her, who'd made terrible mistakes but had loved her fiercely through all of it. Vincent was there when she finally stood up, ready to catch her if she fell. But Lena walked out of that hospital room on her own feet, grief-stricken but not broken. Her father had given her that final gift, the knowledge that she was strong enough to survive even this. The funeral was small, attended by her father's old colleagues from the police department and a few friends from the neighborhood. Vincent stood beside Lena throughout, a steady presence that kept her anchored when everything else felt untethered. Marcus Reeve appeared at the back of the church, and Lena felt Vincent tense beside her. But he didn't confront the older man, didn't make a scene. He just acknowledged Marcus's presence with a small nod, and Marcus returned it before slipping away. You okay? Lena murmured. Yeah. He loved her too, in his own broken way. He deserves to mourn. Vincent's hand found hers. Besides, I'm done carrying that anger. It's heavy, and I'd rather use the energy for something better. After the funeral, after the reception, after all the condolences and casseroles and well-meaning platitudes, Lena and Vincent returned to her apartment, the one she still kept despite spending most nights at his place. She needed space that was entirely hers, space to process her grief without feeling like she had to be strong for anyone else. Vincent understood, kissing her gently at the door. I'm here if you need me, but I'm also gone if you need space. Stay, Lena said. Just stay. They lay on her bed fully clothed, wrapped around each other in the gathering darkness. Lena talked about her father, the real him, not the sanitized version people told at funerals. His stubbornness, his guilt, his fierce protectiveness that sometimes crossed into controlling, his love of terrible action movies and good whiskey, his ability to see through lies except his own. He was complicated, she said finally, like your mother. Like all of us, really, and I think I'm finally okay with that. Complicated people leave complicated legacies. Vincent's voice was thoughtful. I've been reading his journal. Your father was harder on himself than anyone else could have been. He documented every mistake, every moment of doubt, every time he chose the comfortable lie over the hard truth. He was human, Lena. That's all. Just human and trying his best in an impossible situation. Did it help? Reading it? Yeah, it helped me understand that there are no villains in this story, just people making choices that seemed right at the time and living with the consequences. Vincent pulled her closer. It helped me forgive him, and maybe, eventually, forgive myself for all the choices I made in the name of revenge. They fell asleep like that, finding comfort in each other's presence. And over the following weeks, Lena felt herself slowly emerging from grief into something that looked like acceptance. Her father was gone, but the life he'd helped her build continued. Renacita thrived. Her partnership with Vincent deepened. She was creating something beautiful from all the broken pieces. 4 months after her father's death, Lena stood in Renacita's kitchen during the lunch prep, teaching one of the new line cooks the proper technique for making fresh pasta. The young woman, barely 22, fresh out of culinary school, watched with the same hunger Lena remembered feeling when she'd scrubbed dishes at Aurelius. "You're good at this," Vincent observed from the doorway, watching Lena guide the girl's hands through the motion. "She reminds me of myself at that age, full of passion and terror in equal measure." Lena smiled as the line cook finally got the technique right, the pasta dough coming together perfectly. "I remember what it's like to feel invisible. I'm not going to let that happen to anyone in my kitchen." "Our kitchen," Vincent corrected, moving to stand beside her. "Speaking of which, I have a proposition." Lena raised an eyebrow. "Your propositions make me nervous." "This one is good, I promise." He pulled out his phone, showing her architectural renderings. "I've been looking at properties in Brooklyn. There's a space in Park Slope that would be perfect for a second location. More casual than Renacita, focused on the pasta making you're teaching right now. What do you think?" Lena studied the renderings, her mind already racing with possibilities. "You want to expand?" "I want us to expand. Equal partners, equal investment, equal creative control." Vincent's expression was carefully neutral, but she could see the excitement underneath. "Unless you think it's too soon." "It's absolutely too soon. We should wait at least another year, make sure Renacita is stable before we stretch ourselves thin." Lena handed back the phone, watching Vincent's face fall. Then she grinned. "But when has that ever stopped us from doing something reckless? Let's look at the space next week." Vincent's answering smile was brilliant. He pulled her into a kiss, ignoring the amused looks from the kitchen staff. "Get a room, you two," Gianna called from the pasta station. "Some of us are trying to work." "This is our room," Vincent shot back. "We own it. We can kiss in it if we want." The easy banter, the comfort of being themselves in front of the staff. It was everything Lena hadn't known she needed. This wasn't the cage Vincent had built for her all those months ago. This was a partnership built on honesty, trust, and the willingness to keep choosing each other even when it was hard. They looked at the Brooklyn property the following week. It was perfect, smaller than Renacita, with an open kitchen design that would let customers watch the pasta being made. Lena could already see it: fresh pasta, simple sauces, the kind of food that felt like home. "We should name it after your mother," Lena said suddenly. "The real her, not the idealized version. Isabella's. Simple, honest, human." Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Then, "She would have liked that, the honesty of it. And she would have loved this space. From what you've told me about her cooking, this is exactly the kind of restaurant she would have wanted." "You're right." Vincent looked around the empty space with new eyes. "Isabella's it is." They signed the lease that afternoon, partners in every sense of the word. Over the following months, they split their time between running Renacita and building Isabella's from the ground up. It was exhausting, exhilarating, and exactly what they both needed. Lena hired the young line cook she'd been teaching to be Isabella's head pasta maker, giving her the kind of opportunity Lena herself had needed at that age. She built a team of people who'd been overlooked or underestimated, creating a culture where talent mattered more than pedigree. Vincent handled the business side with his usual precision, but he'd learned to consult Lena on every major decision. They fought sometimes, passionate disagreements about menu pricing or design choices or hiring decisions. But they fought fair, and they always came back to the same foundation. They were partners, building something together. Isabella's opened 6 months later to immediate success. Critics praised the approachable elegance, the focus on technique over pretension. Lines formed around the block for handmade ravioli and simple cacio e pepe. It was everything Rinashita wasn't: casual, warm, accessible, and that made it perfect. Standing in Isabella's kitchen on opening night, watching customers enjoy food she'd created, Lena felt a sense of completion she'd never expected to find. This was what freedom looked like. Not escape from Vincent Moretti, but the ability to build something meaningful alongside him. Happy? Vincent asked, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. Terrified, Lena admitted. We're running 2 restaurants now. If anything goes wrong, then we handle it together. He kissed her temple. That's what partners do. The word still made Lena smile. Partners. Not owner and employee. Not manipulator and pawn. Just 2 complicated people who'd found each other through the worst possible circumstances and chosen to build something better. A year after Isabella's opened, Vincent proposed. Not with a grand gesture or public spectacle, but in Renacita's kitchen after closing, with flour on both their hands and exhaustion making them both slightly giddy. "Marry me," he said, like he was commenting on the weather. Lena looked up from the dough she was kneading. "What?" "Marry me. Make this partnership legal in every possible way. Let me spend the rest of my life proving that some things that start wrong can end up right." Vincent pulled a ring from his pocket, simple, elegant, with a single diamond that caught the kitchen's fluorescent light. "I know we've done everything backwards. I know I manipulated you and trapped you and made your life complicated in ways you never asked for. But I love you, Lena Ward, and I want to build a future with you that has nothing to do with the past." Lena's hands were shaking as she wiped them on her apron. "You're supposed to get down on one knee. I'm not a traditional man." But Vincent knelt anyway, looking up at her with such vulnerable hope that Lena's heart ached. "Will you marry me?" She thought about the girl who'd scrubbed dishes in Aurelius's kitchen, exhausted and invisible and slowly suffocating under debt and responsibility. She thought about the cage Vincent had built, and how she'd walked into it willingly because she'd had no other choice. She thought about all the lies and manipulation and complicated truths that had brought them to this moment. Then she thought about the partnership they'd built, about Renacita and Isabella's and the life they were creating together, about the way Vincent had learned to choose honesty over control, vulnerability over power, about the man he was becoming and the woman she'd become beside him. "Yes," Lena said, and watched Vincent's face transform with joy. "But I'm keeping my name professionally. Ward Moretti sounds terrible for a restaurant marquee." Vincent laughed, sliding the ring onto her finger and standing to kiss her thoroughly. "Whatever you want, as long as you're mine in the ways that matter." "I'm not yours," Lena corrected, pulling back to look him in the eye. "I'm my own, but I choose to share my life with you. There's a difference. The most important difference." Vincent's forehead pressed against hers. "Thank you for choosing me, even after everything I put you through. Thank you for learning to deserve it." They were married 6 months later in a small ceremony at Renacita, surrounded by the kitchen staff who'd become family and the few people from their complicated pasts who'd earned their places in the future. Marcus Reeves sent flowers but didn't attend, respecting the boundaries Vincent had established. The ceremony was simple, honest, and entirely theirs. Lena wore a dress the color of cream, simple and elegant. Vincent wore a suit that made him look less like a dangerous crime boss and more like a man building a legitimate empire through talent and hard work. They wrote their own vows, promising honesty and partnership and the willingness to keep choosing each other even when it was hard. "I can't promise I won't make mistakes," Vincent said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "I can't promise I won't occasionally slip into old habits of control and manipulation, but I can promise that I'll keep trying to be the partner you deserve, that I'll choose transparency over deception, collaboration over control, that I'll love you fiercely and honestly for the rest of my life." Lena's vows were equally honest. "I can't promise I won't question your motives sometimes. Can't promise I won't remember how this started and wonder if I'm fooling myself. But I can promise that I'll keep choosing to trust you, that I'll fight for this partnership even when it's easier to walk away, that I'll love you not despite our complicated history, but including all of it." They sealed their promises with a kiss, and Lena felt something fundamental click into place. This was her choice, her future, her life, built on foundations that had started rotten, but had been carefully, painfully rebuilt into something solid. The reception was held in Isabella's, with food from both restaurants served family style. Gianna gave a speech about watching Lena grow from a terrified new chef to a confident restaurateur. One of Vincent's business associates told embarrassing stories about Vincent's early attempts at legitimate business ventures. And through it all, Lena and Vincent sat side by side, hands clasped, building memories that had nothing to do with revenge or manipulation. 2 years after they married, Lena stood in the kitchen of their third restaurant, a fine dining establishment in the West Village named simply Ward and Moretti. She was training a young chef who reminded her so much of herself it was almost painful, guiding him through the intricacies of sauce reduction. Vincent appeared in the doorway, and Lena felt the same flutter she'd felt that first night in Aurelius's kitchen when his gray eyes had found her in the shadows. But this time, there was no manipulation behind his gaze, just love, partnership, and shared purpose. "The Times reviewer is here," he said quietly. "Table 6. "I know, I saw him come in." Lena didn't look up from her work. "We're ready." "We always are." Vincent moved to stand beside her, watching her work with the same intensity he'd once used to plan revenge. "I'm proud of you, of us, of everything we've built." "Even though it started as your elaborate revenge plot?" Lena finally looked up, a slight smile playing at her lips. "Especially because of that. It means we can survive anything." Vincent's hand found the small of her back, familiar and grounding. "We took something ugly and transformed it into something beautiful. That's not nothing." He was right. They'd taken manipulation and revenge, lies and pain, and somehow created a partnership that was stronger for having survived its toxic origins. Rinascita was now a Michelin-starred institution. Isabella's had expanded to 3 locations. Ward and Moretti was already generating buzz before its official opening. But more than the restaurants, more than the critical acclaim or financial success, they'd created a relationship built on honesty and choice. Vincent had learned to relinquish control, to trust Lena's judgment, to choose vulnerability over power. Lena had learned to trust again, to take up space, to believe in her own worth beyond what anyone else decided to give her. The review came out 3 days later, declaring Ward and Moretti an instant classic, praising the chemistry between the co-chefs and the way their different styles complemented each other. Lena read it with Vincent in their apartment, the penthouse they now truly shared, with her books on the shelves and her art on the walls and every decision made together. "We did it," she said, setting down the newspaper. "We did." Vincent pulled her into his lap, and Lena settled against him with the ease of long practice. "What's next? A 4th restaurant? Expansion to other cities? A cookbook? How about we just enjoy this for a while?" Lena traced patterns on his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and sure beneath her palm. "How about we take a breath and appreciate what we've built before we start building something new?" "That sounds dangerously close to contentment." Vincent's tone was teasing, but Lena heard the genuine wonder underneath. "I'm not sure I know how to do contentment." "Then we'll figure it out together, like everything else." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Somewhere out there, people were washing dishes in restaurant kitchens, dreaming of more. Somewhere, desperate people were making impossible choices to save the ones they loved. Somewhere, revenge was being planned and cages were being built, and the cycle continued. But here, in this moment, Lena Ward and Vincent Moretti had found something rarer than success or acclaim or even justice. They'd found partnership built on truth, love that had survived its own ugly origins, and the freedom that came from choosing each other every single day. The cage was gone. The revenge was over. The lies had been burned away, leaving only the complicated, beautiful truth. 2 broken people who'd found a way to build something whole. And that, finally, was enough. Lena stood and moved to the piano Vincent kept by the windows, the one from his childhood that had survived his mother's death and his father's brutality. She'd learned to play over the past year, finding peace in the simple act of creating music. Her fingers found the keys, picking out a melody she'd been working on. Vincent joined her, standing behind the bench with his hands on her shoulders. "That's beautiful. What is it?" "Something new. I'm calling it Rinascita." Lena looked up at him, seeing her future reflected in his eyes. "Rebirth. Because that's what we are. what we've always been. Not victims of our circumstances, but people brave enough to be reborn into something better. Play it again, Vincent said softly. I want to remember this moment. Everything about it. So Lena played, the melody flowing through the apartment and out into the night. And as her hands moved across the keys, she thought about how far she'd come from that invisible girl in Aurelius's kitchen. How far they'd both come from the people they'd been when revenge and desperation had first brought them together. The journey had been painful, complicated, marked by lies and manipulation, and moments where either of them could have chosen destruction over creation. But they'd survived it. More than survived. They'd transformed it into something worth having. Partners, not pawns. Equals, not captor and captive. Two people building a future that honored the past without being imprisoned by it. Lena finished the melody and felt Vincent's arms come around her, pulling her back against his chest. I love you, he murmured against her hair. Thank you for seeing who I could become, instead of only who I'd been. Thank you for letting me see it, Lena replied. Thank you for choosing to become it. They stayed like that as the city moved around them. Two people who'd found freedom not in escape, but in the courage to build something real from broken foundations. The restaurants would continue to thrive. The staff would become family. The critics would praise and occasionally criticize. Life would continue in all its messy, complicated beauty. But this moment, this perfect, hard-won moment of peace, belonged entirely to them. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.